podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! This is a podcast based on a blog of the same name because the game is on, isn't it? That's all. My name is Kylie, and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out the blog at couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and via Google Play to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including but not limited to Broadchurch, New Girl, Game of Thrones, Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Gotham, Supernatural, The 100, Once Upon a Time, Stranger Things, Doctor Who, and the Arrowverse, including Arrow, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Supergirl. Plus, more episodes are in the works, including revisits for How to Get Away with Murder, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and our American Horror Story series covering Roanoke, a revisit to our Marvel's Defender series when we talk Iron Fist, final visits with our Grimm and Vampire Diaries panels to say goodbye to these long-running and ending series in two-part episodes. Plus, we'll be launching new panels covering 13 Reasons Why and Sense8, a new series anniversary retrospective about the Buffyverse covering Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. And because we also look back at shows now past, we'll be looking back at Third Rock from the Sun. What's more, CPU from time to time goes live. We've appeared at Comedy Outlet Mondays at Dog Story Theater and at Grand Rapids Comic-Con in Grand Rapids, Michigan, while streaming live on Facebook. More live appearances are being planned, so make sure you like us at our Facebook page, our Twitter, follow us at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, and or our Pinterest at CPU Podcast, or subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play. In the meantime, if you don't hear your show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we're always seeking new panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any one of our outlets that I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback. Wait, what are we talking about? We don't need feedback. Of course, we do have a blog. Today, we're around the water cooler and taking a first look at the first two seasons, or series if you're British, of international smash hit Sherlock. Series 1 of this program, which enjoys an irregular production schedule, aired from October 24th, 2010 to November 7th, 2010, and Series 2 aired from May 6, 2012 to May 20, 2012 on Public Broadcasting, or PBS, in the U.S., Sherlock airs first on the BBC in the UK. Sherlock is a crime drama television series based on Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes detective stories and was created by Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock Holmes and Martin Freeman as Dr. John Watson. The series is set in the present day, except for a Christmas special featuring a Victorian period fantasy resembling the original Holmes stories. Critical reception has been highly positive, with many reviews praising the quality of the writing, performances, and direction. Sherlock has been nominated for numerous awards, including BAFTAs, Emmys, and a Golden Globe, winning several awards across a variety of categories. The show's won an Emmys for Outstanding Writing for a Miniseries, Movie, or a Dramatic Special for Moffat, Outstanding Lead Actor in a Miniseries or Movie for Cumberbatch, and Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Miniseries or Movie for Freeman, as well as Outstanding Television Movie. In addition, the show was also honored with a Peabody Award in 2011. Sherlock depicts, quote, consulting detective, end quote, Sherlock Holmes solving various mysteries in modern-day London. Holmes is assisted by his flatmate and friend, Dr. John Watson, who has returned from military service in Afghanistan with the Royal Army Medical Corps. Although Metropolitan Police Service Detective Inspector Greg Lestrade, played by Rupert Graves, and others are at first suspicious of Holmes, over time his exceptional intellect and bold powers of observation persuade them of his value. In part through Watson's blog documenting their adventures, Holmes becomes a reluctant celebrity with the press reporting on his cases and eccentric personal life. Both ordinary people and the British government ask for his help. Although the series depicts a variety of crimes and perpetrators, Holmes' conflict with nemesis Jim Moriarty, played by Andrew Scott, is a recurring feature. Molly Hooper, who is played by Louise Brealey, a pathologist at St. Bart's Hospital, occasionally assists Holmes in his cases. Other recurring roles include Una Stubbs as Mrs. Hudson, Holmes and Watson's landlady, and series co-creator Mark Gatiss as Holmes' elder brother Mycroft. Sherlock is easily one of the most popular TV selections ever covered on the CPU podcast, as several people jumped up to volunteer to chat about this acclaimed and popular series. The 7 you hear on the panel today, your moderator included, are all occasional to frequent CPU panelists, and ready to crack the case, as it were. So as always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed the entire series to date and will discuss sensitive plot points. For those of you who haven't watched any of Sherlock and plan to catch up at some point, listen at your own risk, as there are going to be major spoilers. At this time, if you listen to our podcast, you know the drill, and all of these people certainly do. What I'm going to ask the panel to do is to introduce themselves by their first name, well, and in some cases last initial. We'll get to that in a minute. And then I'd also like you to talk about how you came to watch Sherlock, what made you start watching, how'd you find out about it, what kept you watching. And then I'm going to ask you the CPU standard character question to find out how you would rate your interest in the show. Are you ready, panel?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yep. Good to go.
All right. So how would you rate your interest in Sherlock? Do you deduce that it's a show about the greatest detective ever depicted? You, in other words? How can it possibly not be entertaining? Maddeningly elementary. The game is on, Mrs. Hudson, and you've committed to the pursuit of watching this show with the kind of high-level zeal such pursuits warrant. Or you're socially awkward, genius-level smart, and a bit of a sociopath, so you need some kind of outlet. It can't always be noodling on the violin or experimenting with fermented body parts, like Sherlock Holmes. Do you love it, despite your better judgment, and secretly or not so secretly? You find it exciting. Watching it gives you purpose you thought you had otherwise lost, even if some parts or characters can be insufferable to you, like Dr. John Watson. You adore it, but it's an unhealthy adoration that leaves you feeling disappointed or less than satisfied in the end, mainly because it's one-way adoration. Of course, it always means well, like Molly Hooper. You don't always know what's going on, even when the game is on in your own house. Still, you have an affection for it, no matter how daft it may seem, like Mrs. Hudson. You see it as a necessary evil. On the one hand, it's insufferable and annoyingly pretentious. On the other hand, it's smart and helps you develop your own crime-solving skills, such as they are, like Detective Inspector Lestrade. Do you find that it overcompensates for its shortcomings in a way that puts you off and or worries you, despite your troubled history with it? Still, you can't help looking in on it from time to time, like Mycroft Holmes. Or, and I don't expect anybody to answer this one, but I have to have a bookend on the spectrum, do you hate it? Oh, sure, it's smart and well written and well executed, but you're smarter and better written and better executed. At least when you're not, spoiler, dead. Of course, you could be a bit crazy, even psychotic, like Jim Moriarty. Who would like to start?
I can start?
You can!
Yeah, I know how.
All right. It's true.
My name's Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hello. And I'm going to do something that I've never done on any of these panels and pick two characters.
Oh, no!
Even though I silently and not so silently judge you guys when you do that.
So true.
The tables have turned,
That's
friends.
Right. It's for this show only. The first part of Molly Hooper, the unhealthy adoration of this show, but then I'm not disappointed at the end. I don't know, a mix of Sherlock, because I like to, rewatching it was so much fun to, analyze little things, knowing where things were going. So I would be a blend of Molly and Sherlock.
You're the greatest detective who ever lived.
Mm-hmm.
I see. How did you come to watch Sherlock?
Well, I feel like you should get paid for this, but I'm going to mention Netflix again
It's
because
so true.
that's how I watch most of my television. So I saw that it was on there. I've grown up watching Sherlock things, made for TV movies, anything detective related, even going into Agatha Christie stuff. But so when I saw Sherlock was on Netflix, I had to give it a try, and I did, and I loved it.
Well, welcome back, Nick. In fact, you're going to find many of these panelists are especially frequent, except for one. We'll get to that in a minute. But they're from our superhero/nerdier podcast panels. So if you don't listen to those, maybe you should.
He's a sort of superhero and a
well,
nerdy show.
Is he it?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of the first superhero.
Yeah.
He's somewhat
Kyle's
the
gonna
model
get
for
technical.
Batman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everything draws from Sherlock Holmes.
Isn't he an extraordinary gentleman?
Yeah.
That's a comic book.
Mike Cross in it more, but...
All right,
Why
sorry.
don't you all introduce yourself, and then you can launch on this.
I'll just go next. We'll
Okay.
go around the circle or something. I am kind of going to say my answer similar to Nick. Oh, hi, I'm Hilary. Sorry.
Hi, Hilary.
Are you related to anybody in the room,
So
Hilary?
yes, thank you, Spencer, for setting that up.
You're very welcome.
I'm her cousin.
He is. Spoiler alert. Anyways, so Kylie is the moderator, and she's also my sister.
That's true.
Also, my husband is on this podcast as well. I'm sure he will be talking soon. His name is Kyle, but he can reintroduce himself.
That's nice.
You're
No.
welcome. So anyways, going back to what I was saying, I'm kind of pretty much similar to what Nick said. I have an unhealthy love for this show, like Molly, but I would say I'm also very much Sherlock Holmes based on the description. Maddeningly elementary. I am just so in love with this show and happy to be in love with it all at the same time.
Great. How did you find Sherlock?
Because my husband is obsessed with Sherlock Holmes. He always has been. And he
What's he wearing right now?
a deerstalker.
Because I can't see that.
That's true.
But check the Instagram. There's a picture.
Yeah, at Couch Potatoes Unite.
Hug. So yeah, he's pretty obsessed with it. So he knew that this was happening before probably a lot of people did. And so he introduced me to it right away, and I pretty much had instant love for it. And I maybe haven't had instant love for all of the reincarnations of Sherlock Holmes, but this one I did right away, and it's been love ever since.
Love at first sight.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Aww, Benedict.
I see where this is going. Hearts. Welcome back, Hilary, my sister and wife of...
Hey, I'm Kyle,
Hi,
Hilary's
Kyle.
husband. Basically, I would always pick Sherlock Holmes, given the choice. He is the world's greatest detective, and I think greatest literary character ever. Like Hilary said, I loved Sherlock Holmes since I was probably in the 4th grade. I became obsessed with like H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, and then kind of Sherlock Holmes is kind of what you graduate to from there. And once you start reading those, it's like no going back. They're so addictive. So yeah, I've always been obsessed. I've watched every incarnation I could come across, and so I watched it as soon as it came on. I was a little begrudgingly, because modern Sherlock Holmes, it sounds crazy. It's just such a Victorian concept, but it really works. It works on Sherlock, and I'd say it works on Elementary.
That's a different podcast. But welcome back, Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, Kylie. For the sake of this podcast, though, I will be referred to as Kristen L or Chrissy if Spencer gets his way. I am not related to anybody on the panel.
Are you sure?
Sometimes it seems like
Sometimes it seems like I have a couple of brothers on the panel, but in reality, I do not.
Step brothers.
Maybe. So, let's see. My interest in the show, I am...
Not prepared.
No.
Zing!
I was trying to come up with a spicy response saying that Nick stole my answer because I am notorious for having a combination of two on all the other podcasts I'm on. I'm also Molly and Sherlock for reasons that were stated by Nick and Hilary.
That's something different too. I think that's Sleepy Hollow, isn't it?
Maybe. I love the show, absolutely, without a doubt, adore it, and I just think it's one of my top 5 favorite shows on television right now.
Yeah, what she said.
Spoilers.
Don't preview that.
What did I say?
What are the other
said
4 so we
top
know where it
5.
sits?
All I'm saying is it's in my top 5. It could change by the time we record a podcast about everybody's top 5. I'm not spoiling anything.
Preview for those of you listening. We might have some plans for our 100th episode.
That's all you guys. I very much like Kyle, I was introduced to Sherlock Holmes at a very young age. I was probably in middle school and I went through this crazy classic literature reading phase. And so I discovered Sherlock, read the entire canon, and then it kind of helped start my obsession with murder mystery writers like Agatha Christie. So I've been in love with it probably since I was like 10. So when I found out that PBS was going to be airing this Sherlock show that I'd heard some rumblings about on the internet, I couldn't wait, so I started watching it from day one. And I've rewatched it on Netflix and watched everything in real time that I possibly could. So I was there for the 3-year drought. I know how horrible that is.
Yes, we were too. I didn't
Yeah.
mention that, but we were too.
Yeah, so undying love for this wonderful show. I think that's everything.
Welcome back, Kristen.
Thank you.
Kristen L.
Yes.
And you are?
I am Kristin T.
Hi, Kristen T.
Sitting right next to Kristen L.
Well, they don't know that.
Well,
Now they do.
She's painting a picture.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I am half of the other married couple on this podcast. You will soon meet Spencer, who is sitting next to me. And not to be too repetitive, but I can't be anyone else but Mr. Sherlock Holmes about this show. I thoroughly have enjoyed it since the time I began watching it, though I started watching it for a slightly different reason. When it was summer of 2013, I was planning on auditioning for the play Sherlock Holmes, The Final Adventure, and the character I picked to audition for was Irene Adler, so I decided to do some research and decided to watch as many different incarnations of Sherlock Holmes and Irene Adler as I could. And I stumbled upon this, borrowing my friend's Netflix password, and was immediately hooked. And being a not usual TV watcher, this was a discovery. So maybe there's a little bit of that guilty pleasure in there, but I don't think so. There was everything about the show, from the characters to the filming style to the storylines, really connected with me and made me think, and I found myself living with the characters even outside of the show. So definitely one of the greatest shows that I've experienced in my limited TV knowledge.
And what was the outcome of your audition?
I played Miss Irene Adler.
And met
Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
was...
what a segue. Hi, I'm Spencer. And yes, I am Kristen's husband, and we met doing Sherlock Holmes: The Final Adventure, and I got cast as Sherlock, she got cast as Irene, and we've been together pretty much ever since.
It's a love story.
Yes. High-functioning sociopath.
Waiting for that.
Anyway, I would probably also go with Sherlock Holmes with that little bit of Molly, because I did become obsessed with the show because of how well they've modernized it without detracting from the original context. It's just thoroughly enjoyable from top to bottom.
Welcome back,
Thank you.
Spencer. Welcome back, Kristen T. The last time this couple appeared together was on our Downton Abbey panel, which has been over a year since Downton Abbey has left us.
We may have a little bit of a British influence on this side of the room.
What? Shocking.
Just in case anybody thought I was doing a voice.
Oh, okay. No, the accent's
it's
real,
real.
folks.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
It's real.
Well, welcome to all of you. As you know from the intro, my name is Kylie. I'm related to half the panel, and I know the other half quite well. Despite that.
And actually, we met you doing Sherlock as well.
It's true. I was the assistant director for that show.
I'm just
Thoroughly. It's a love story. I'm not just kidding.
It's weird how long it's taken us to do this podcast.
Yeah.
It is, and yet it isn't, because I didn't watch Sherlock right away.
Earth-shattering news.
If you all are shocked, I gave her crap about it for a long time.
I have had a long love of Sherlock Holmes. I've not read all of the stories, but I've read a number of them. I don't stick with reading quite as well as maybe some others in the room, so I kind of bounce back and forth. I have a slight pop culture ADD. But I do love mysteries, generally speaking, especially by the British writers, gotta say it. And it was eventually going to happen. I just didn't watch it right away. It had nothing to do with anything. It just didn't happen right away. I didn't catch it right away. I didn't think to watch it right away. But then guess what? A bunch of CPU panelists really love TV like me, and all the ones in the room said, "Why are we not doing a Sherlock podcast?" And so you find us here today. So I started watching it, and I kept watching it for that reason, but also because it is really excellent. In fact, it's refreshing in how it presents itself. It's really, really well directed. It's really, really well performed. And I don't know why I wasn't watching it earlier. I have no good excuse other than I just didn't think to do it. So,
Shame.
hey, I'm getting there now. Jeez. Sisters. Anyway, I would actually be a split between two, but not Molly and Sherlock. I would
Moriarty.
be. No.
That would be
Are you trying
interesting.
to paint me as the villain?
Moriarty and Mrs. Hudson.
That's weird.
That fits Spencer so well.
Somewhat.
I would actually be a split between Sherlock and also Watson. I'm going to I am a huge Martin Freeman fan. I love him in all the things he ever does all the time. He's really, really good. Even when he's not in something good, like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, he's still good. His Arthur Dent was perfect. Everybody else was not. So
Alan Rickman was good.
Yeah,
Alan
That's
Rickman,
above.
yeah.
I
Can't hate
forgot
Alan
about
Rickman.
Alan Rickman. Yes,
Can't
that's
hate him.
true.
Not a very
Rest in
good
peace.
podcast.
Yes.
love you,
seriously.
Kristen.
I know, it's
Yeah,
not a
seriously.
Hitchhiker's podcast.
R.I.P.
Heart.
I like him too. So I love Martin Freeman. So I'm going to give myself partially Dr. John Watson. There are some insufferable characters, although not much, and not often. But mostly I love it. I just love it secretly or not so secretly. And I find it exciting watching it. It gives me purpose that I thought I had otherwise lost. Yeah. So welcome to the Sherlock panel. This is going to be a two-part series. This first episode is going to cover Series 1 and 2. The second episode will cover Series 3, the Christmas special, and Series 4, which just aired earlier this year, 2017. And should they produce more, although that's a really big if right now, we will continue to cover the show. But because we're taking a first look, it's now time for the CPU standard, famous, infamous star business, as Hilary calls it, or the star rating scale. What I'd like you all to do is to go around the table and rate it stars and justify your answer. Are you ready for this?
Do we have a choice?
Yes.
No, you don't have a choice, but
Then I'm ready.
enthusiasm could be nice, I'm saying. So how would you rate Sherlock overall? Although I can already feel I'm predicting the numbers already.
Yeah.
You can probably stop after
Who
the
here is
first
not
one.
a
Yeah.
five?
Right.
Who here is not a five? Okay, there's
Oh,
one person.
Okay,
Okay.
read
Wow,
all
that
the
was
description.
unexpected.
Nope, nobody knows who it was.
I'm a 5+.
Oh, tricky. I thought he was going to be a villain about it. All right.
Yeah.
I'm a 5+. This is probably some of the best TV I've ever watched.
All right, let me just read the 5. So normally it would go from 5 stars to 1 star and get progressively worse about it, but the 5-star rating is, I have to watch everything. Holy smokes, it's the greatest thing ever in the history of TV. It's the best Sherlock Holmes adaptation you could possibly imagine. 5 stars. Is that where you all are?
Yeah,
That's where I am.
Absolutely.
Wow.
My favorite adaptation of
Like,
Holmes I've seen
literally-
by
by far.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
5 stars, pretty good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. I'm 5 stars too. I can't find a fault with it, honestly. There's one casting that I don't really love, but I don't hate. But
Who's
I
that?
What one's that?
She's
Irene.
going to...
Oh.
Sorry.
I didn't mind the casting. It was some of the
Interpretation.
interpretation
Yeah.
of her character. I didn't think the casting was the problem.
Well, then, we'll talk about it. It's in these 2 seasons. So, let's get to that. Geez, did you like the show right away? Everybody kind of answered yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious as this is the first panel that is across the board 5s on a show.
Yes, it is.
And it's such a large panel, too.
Yeah.
And it's a large panel.
So that says something.
Yep. Stranger Things was close. Michael had to be the evil one there.
Oh my god.
And The Flash was
Were
close.
any of us
and
on
I
the
was
Stranger
evil
Things
one.
panel? Oh,
Yeah,
and
those
the
two.
rest of them were rookies.
Not really.
I'm just kidding. I don't even know who it was.
Lord. Let's talk about Sherlock. So, we're going to start with Series 1. What we're going to do in these panels is basically, because there's only 3 episodes per series, so it's a deep dive on the 3 episodes. It's whatever you want to talk about. They're pretty dense. The mysteries themselves are pretty dense. The stories they come from are pretty dense. So it's really up to you how much you want to talk about it. So let's talk about series or season 1, which contains the episodes A Study in Pink, The Blind Baker, and The Great Game. What did you like and what didn't you like?
Can I just say overall about the
You
show?
can do whatever you want, Nick.
Each episode is like a movie. I don't
It
even
is.
want to say
It's an
movie.
hour and a
half. Yeah, it is.
It's not just a made-for-TV movie. It's like
A full out.
It's a
an
movie.
amazing, well-produced movie that could be in theaters and would be worth the money to pay for it.
I think they have broadcasted it.
They did
They
that
do.
Christmas
Yes.
special in
In the
theaters.
theaters.
Yes.
Yeah. Simulcast thing.
Well, I wish I had gone to that.
It makes me understand why there's so much time between seasons as well.
Yeah.
Because of that much
Well, they
going
take
into
such
it.
care with the writing too to reinterpret each Sherlock Holmes story in a modern way.
Yeah,
I think it's such a
absolutely.
great job.
Well,
So
and
I
you
didn't
know
have
the-
to wait that long for episodes, so I guess I don't know if it balances out for worth it for some of the people who had to live through the 3-year drought, but
3-year drought
3 year-
was painful.
It was
3-year
hard.
drought, and then you watch all 3 of them in like 2
Yeah,
days, and then
because-
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, 3 more years.
It's-
Yeah,
That's
here we
tough.
go. Yeah,
but
that's
it's
tough.
just so good.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
it was still worth it for me.
And it's very interesting to watch the show and then read the stories that it's based on in close proximity, because it's really interesting to see the elements that are mainly from one story, like A Study in Scarlet, A Study in Pink, but there's also things from other stories, other canon stories that are tied in very, very well.
And I mean, most interpretations, they never cover the whole Watson-Holmes meeting, which is why A Study in Scarlet's so great, because it's, Watson dropped into this very odd situation that's completely out of his element. I mean, most of them just skip that and go straight to living together, straight to just the solving cases.
Well, because the original stories, it's Watson telling them.
Past tense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
They're barely even liberties, but the things that are different, I don't mind. They
Yeah.
almost all make
And usually
sense.
the things
or
that are
great.
different are tied in from another story, just
Right.
subtly weaved
Yeah.
into a
Or,
different one.
yeah.
As foreshadowing devices.
Right.
And you'd mentioned Elementary earlier as being another example of the modernization that works well. This is even better than
Yeah.
that.
Way
And
better.
it's
Way
That's the
Way
thing.
better.
People don't give Elementary a lot of credit just because Sherlock's out. If Sherlock wasn't here, I think Elementary would be much more critically acclaimed. But because there's 2 competing at the same time,
And it's so
a lot of
easy for us
people
to watch
wouldn't give
both.
Elementary
Yeah.
a chance just because they love Sherlock so much.
And
I think-
Elementary's making, what, 20? Almost
24 episodes
yeah.
a season, so there's more filler.
this is the superior of all of them.
This is
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is quality
Pinnacle.
versus quantity.
I
Yeah.
agree with that.
If we're comparing the two, though, I mean, yes, but also my Sherlock's got to be British, English, number one. And I tried watching Elementary.
Johnny
isn't
Lee
Johnny
Miller
Lee
is
Miller
British.
English?
He is
In the
English.
show?
And
No,
he's
not in the
English.
show.
not in the
Well,
show.
he is, but he's
He is.
living in New York. But he doesn't speak with a very strong. He doesn't appear
He tones
to be
it
very
down.
British.
Yeah, he tones down his natural accent.
But he
That
still
doesn't.
is.
That doesn't. I've watched a handful of episodes of Elementary, and that doesn't bother me. Just like it being in modern day, in
Well, there's
theory,
more
would
than
bother
that,
me. But
though.
And not to get too off track, but Lucy Liu being cast as Watson was just a big no-no for me at first. It's grown on me a little bit,
Yeah.
but that's
I
She's
don't
still the
like
weak
her.
link on that show.
Yeah.
I don't like her.
isn't it just a link of 2 though?
No.
They have more.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have a lot
It's,
more.
so, I mean, the casting for Sherlock, putting Benedict Cumberbatch, who is just phenomenal in everything I've seen him do,
And I think
since
related
before
to
he
Dylan.
was even
Yeah,
famous.
he is. He's a descendant.
No, I
didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's related
he
to
is.
Sir
He's a
Arthur
descendant.
Conan Doyle.
That's even cooler. And the parents, his parents in the show, his
Yes.
real parents.
Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
very
awesome.
good.
And Mrs. Hudson is a best friend of his mom, the actress who plays Mrs.
Eustace
Hudson.
is fantastic.
Yeah, so they already had a really strong bond before the show even started, which shows.
Adorbs.
Yes.
Yeah, the casting on this was fantastic, and Martin Freeman does play a very, very good.
He's
Dr.
perfect.
Watson.
I
Oh,
love him.
amazing.
And their chemistry together is flawless. I think that's the thing you notice from the jump, because the first episode is almost completely the mystery is there, and it's important, and it introduces you to this Sherlock and how he works and everything, but the meat from that episode is their meeting and their friendship forming, and I just love how it has evolved over the course of the series. Even it's a little bit of a different dynamic than even the Sherlock and Watson from the stories. They have that friendship, but there's more of a developed bond, I think, in this show, which I really, really enjoy. And I have not seen anywhere else. Now, I don't know if I have patience for Elementary. I really tried to watch it, and I did not like it. So, that's just the way I feel. But let's talk about Sherlock. So talk about Series 1, other than, unless you all want to keep going overall, that's up to you too.
I just wanted to say, the thing that shocked me the most is, but it works, is the departure on James Moriarty. I mean, in theory, if somebody just told you about that character and you read the stories, you'd be like, Jim Moriarty, that's ridiculous, but it works. And then they built him up from episode 1.
Yeah, I mean, you
So they
learn
really
about
gives him
right
his
away.
due as an actual huge threat.
Yeah.
Although he's not formally introduced until the 3rd episode, which is the
Right.
great game.
Yeah.
Yes.
At first,
Well,
I was a little...
He's mentioned in the first one.
He's mentioned.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah,
don't
not
see
formal-
him
yeah,
until the
formally
swimming pool
introduced
scene.
Like, see him.
See,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those odd things where they completely change a character from canon. So instead of being this amazing professor with a high intellect, he's a complete psychopath. And at first
With
it's
a
like...
high intellect.
Yes, with a high intellect.
But after about 15 minutes, I was sold.
Yeah.
Oh, instantaneously.
Definitely.
I
Agreed.
loved the modern take on him because you have to put him into this world. A lot of things are obviously very different from the Victorian time. So
True.
Well, and it just works. I mean, he's the flip side of Sherlock. He's Sherlock without attachments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he shows that
Yeah.
in some of his choices that he makes throughout the episodes. He forces Sherlock to show that, those attachments.
absolutely.
In a way.
Another character that's different is Mycroft. You don't get much of him in the original stories, and he's basically removed from society. He'll solve any mystery that he could see from the window, but he can't bother to go.
The
He
touching
sees it
his
as
club.
beneath him.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that Mycroft is played with, I am superior to Sherlock, but I don't need to prove that.
Yeah.
And he is in a different modern way removed from society. He's he's separate from it, and it's like even when the things are different, it's still they found a almost better or more dynamic way to show it.
And, I mean, just to show that in his own weird way he cares about Sherlock. Because in the stories he's very... I mean, they're very arm's length, like very stiff upper lip to each other. And the show did a good job of having them be antagonistic, but then you can still get glimpses of he always has Sherlock's back.
That brotherly relationship.
Yeah, that brother,
Yeah.
you can't do that to my brother.
Yeah.
I can, but you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Well, and I think because in the stories for the original Moriarty, it's more about here is someone who can challenge my intellect. May not be superior to me, but the only one who can come close. We still have that dynamic, but you're right. It adds more of an emotional attachment to this Moriarty, which, even though he's psycho, humanizes him and keeps him from being a caricature, because he could very well descend that way. This one particularly blowing up people. So what do you think of Series 1?
I loved it. That's what I hooked in the first place.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
And it,
You gotta
unlike,
talk more. It's a podcast.
Or maybe we
unlike
should go
most,
episode by episode or something.
What did you think of A Study in Pink based on A Study in Scarlet?
I wanted to say about both series that it's rewatchable, and
Yes.
that's
I
hard.
have rewatched
That's
it
hard
so
for. It
many
almost was
times.
better for me the second time too.
Yeah.
And you know what's coming, and it doesn't matter because everything else about
It's
it's so
still
dynamic.
exciting.
Yeah.
It's still suspenseful. You
Well,
still get
there's
wrapped
so
up in the
much to
acting and the
notice.
writing.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of the things that Stephen Moffat has always done in his writing is he will plant a seed very early on, and it will pay off much, much later. So
Yeah.
when you go back and rewatch it after watching the entire series, you will pick up on things. For example, Jim Moriarty's music choice is the Bee Gees.
Right.
You see it once when he first appears at the
Yep.
swimming pool, and then you'll catch it again much, much later. And
Yep.
we went back and watched Season 2, Episode 1 last night, and they had previously on Sherlock, and they had that whole swimming pool scene, and the Bee Gees thing kicked in, and it was just like a revelation. It's like, he's always listening to the Bee Gees. There's little seeds that he will plant. I mean, over 4 seasons, it took them 7 years to do the 4 seasons? Something like that.
Yeah.
And all the way through, as you go back, there's threads that things in episode 1 will be rewarded in episode 1 of season 4. It's very, very clever.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And I think, kind of going back to talking about the changes and additions, I love the addition of Molly Hooper. She is
Yeah.
by far one of my favorite characters on the show, and I think having her there is, I don't know, it's hard to put into words. I really, really enjoyed her quite a bit.
She
and her
actually allows
progression.
some humanization of
She,
Sherlock.
Yeah,
she
she
balances.
does.
She's that
She
counterpoint.
balances the personality.
Kind of helps him to realize when he's being a dick.
Sometimes better than Watson.
And that's the other thing. In the books, the stories you're told, you know that they have this relationship, and there's little moments, but the show gives you more of that, and you get to see it, and you get to see it portrayed by 2 amazing actors. This show really makes me love Sherlock Holmes like the stories did, but like brand new at the same time.
I truly think that if Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was able to watch these, he would be applauding them.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's hard, in my mind, the biggest challenge of doing Sherlock nowadays is, he has that memory. He memorized all these things, different perfume smells, different things. We have the internet, so that would be really easy for anyone to do that. But really, we don't. He has his mind palace and he funnels through it, and he sees the connections that other people might not see.
And I like the visual choice they made when he's doing
love
all of his
that.
thinking, or when people are getting
See
text
his
messages, to see everything
Mm-hmm.
pop up on the screen.
Or
is
when he's
wonderful.
Yeah,
Looking-
instead
or
of
when
having
he's
him
looking-
explain
yeah.
it to Watson out loud, like
Yeah,
by
right. We're able to
interpretation,
follow
which then
along.
makes everyone think Watson's an idiot. This
Yeah.
version
Right.
easily avoids that.
Yeah.
Or even when he's looking at an individual and he's literally deducing everything about them, and you're seeing it pop up in the visual text.
And then at very poignant moments when he can't deduce anything.
Yes,
Someone-
exactly.
Yeah, you see all the question marks. And,
That was such a smart choice.
I also love in the modernization the use of texting to replace the letters. It's such an
And the
obvious...
blog, like
And the
John
blog.
Watson's blog. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's an obvious choice, but it works so smoothly and so well.
One other thing, too, about season 1, because they're introducing the modern versions, we have the new visual styles and all the updates. I like that they didn't choose 3 of the more famous stories to do to introduce us. I like that they chose kind of, I'm going to call it like mid-tier, like stuff people are familiar with, but it's not immediately thought of. So we're not so distracted by the story, one that everybody knows about. It's more, let's get into it, and then we'll...
Like they're
We'll
waiting
work
to see
our
how
way
the
there.
story's going to play out instead of just watching it as it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, they take the basic thread of a story
Yeah.
and change it enough to make it still be interesting, so you're not exactly sure of how the outcome's going to be.
But then, I like in season 2, we get into the Irene Adler story, because that's still one of the more famous ones in the canon. We get the Rheinbach Falls story, which is the most famous, and the Hunt of the Baskervilles. Those are the 3 biggest stories, and I like that they saved those for season 2.
So true.
I didn't think about that just now, but those really are.
They
the,
did. Those are the 3 big ones when
And
you think of
that's
Sherlock
season
Holmes
2.
in that season 2.
So the viewers you didn't catch in season 1 with the modernization and the new adaptation and the characters
draw 'em in.
in season 2 with the stories.
Yeah. I mean, it was so true after we watched season 1, because I was already so in love with series 1. And then Kyle, because he's always on top of knowing what's coming, and so he told me the stories they were going to be doing next, and I was like, yay! I was just so excited for it, and that just added to the element of excitement.
Which they announced them still like 2 years before it aired.
Right, did.
Right.
Once they got the green light for season 2,
They knew what they were gonna
They
do.
said, okay, we already knew. These are the 3 that we're going to adapt. That was a big day when they made that announcement.
Yes, it was very exciting.
Yeah.
The villains that they put in as well are very, very clever villains. They're not... So, some of the villains in the original canon are kind of just dumb people that Sherlock dance around.
They stumble upon.
For example, in I think it's the 2nd episode of season 1 with the cab driver killer.
No,
That's
that's
the first.
main
That's
one.
still the
That's
first
study
one.
and
The first one. What a brilliant villain!
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you felt creeped out completely by him, and
Totally.
he was absolutely brilliant.
And really, honestly, maybe it was just me. That was one of them that I did not see that coming. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't see it coming.
My only problem with rewatching it is there's the moment where Sherlock kind of figures it out. It's the person in this cab,
That's true.
and
He
then
does.
he...
Still goes with him.
Well, no, it's he
Yeah,
thinks
I
it's
knew
the
there was
passenger
that,
in the cab, and then doesn't. Because Sherlock's so smart, he doesn't figure out it's the cabbie till much later.
But-
I kind of feel like he made it.
But that was the brilliance of that story, was it's the person that nobody ever pays attention to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just hope Sherlock's supposed to pay attention to the things that nobody else does. So that was my
but
only
he's not
little issue.
perfect.
Right.
Just because he says he's perfect doesn't mean he is.
Right.
Oh, right,
I
those are
guess
some-
what I'm saying is
yeah.
you don't see that flaw the first time. You don't notice it when you're going along with the ride, but you definitely, it's very obvious when you know it's the cabbie. That's the only thing in rewatching that really stands out as a big, almost character moment for him.
I've only watched these once.
Why?
Because I just... I think we've covered that,
Because we had
Nick.
to lock her in a basement with nothing but 3 Sherlock DVDs. And watch it.
DVD.
But I would... Yeah, DVDs. Now, Spencer. Now. But...
Sorry, they're on the
all I'm saying is I'm actually looking forward to finishing what's out there and then going and watching.
You haven't
the whole
watched the
thing.
rest?
I haven't watched Series 4 yet. No, it's not on Netflix. I have to go find it, and it's not on the PBS station either. So
They're
It's so
keeping
good.
it from you.
I
know.
can give you access. I'll hook you up.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what
She
that
has a
means,
network
but-
of information.
I know. That sounded
I
so
actually
like...
Baker Street regulars.
I kind of do.
sounded so under the table.
It did.
Yeah, I got you.
She's not Plainfield irregulars.
So not to get into the next two series, but
Yeah, we still really haven't talked much about this one.
No.
don't worry.
I will say, out of all of the episodes of Sherlock, if I had to pick a weakest one, it'd be the second of season
Agreed.
1, The Blind Banker.
I agree with that as well.
Yeah.
That's
and
what
it's
I
like, it's
think.
perfectly fine on its own.
But when
But
you're looking at everything,
when you look at everything like villain and the mystery and everything, it is just subpar compared. I mean, because
And it's a
they-
little
That's right.
slower.
It was
yeah,
a little
I mean, it's
slower.
right behind that cab
Agreed.
driver villain and
Yeah.
Jim Moriarty.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
about building the characters more.
Yeah.
It is.
The episode was the kind of the filler episode of the first season.
Yeah, I mean, you
to
get like,
you.
and that's like the one where you see that John Watson's kind of, is a woman. Like you see him playing the field and introducing how their dynamic works together. But then the actual mystery wasn't all that interesting.
But usually when you get to a midpoint in a show's first season, that's kind of what happens. I mean, you have to make a really big splash with the pilot, then usually it kind of...
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, but it's the midpoint of 3 episodes.
But I'm saying in general, when it's
No,
a full
I
season,
agree
and
with
this
you.
is a season, even though it is shorter, but usually it's that midpoint where it kind of falters a little bit. Or
They
it's
are
not
an
as-
hour and a half apiece, so
Yeah.
it's a little
Yes.
further along than just 2 episodes.
Yeah, but I mean, they usually
Okay, the
they
second
put
part,
the
the
strongest
second part of a
stories on the
trilogy,
bookend.
because I mean,
It is the
really,
second part
it's
of a
really
trilogy.
more
It's all about building.
than a
It's-
season. It's each one is a trilogy of movies.
Because I'd
Yeah.
probably say
Yeah.
the same about series 2.
It's like
the
the
middle
Two
one is
Towers,
Yeah.
almost
the last
not my
one,
favorite.
Empire Strikes
Yeah.
Back.
Because you want to save your strong stuff for
Yeah,
the
no,
bookends.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
In my opinion, each series gets better and better, but I think it's
I
because
agree.
Oh, for sure.
it's building on the previous as well.
Although I really liked the second season a lot.
Yeah.
I think most people, it's their favorite.
Episode
Yeah.
1 of season 2 was probably the best.
I mean, Hillary watches it like
I never
every
thought
week.
Yeah, I think it's up there. I don't know if it's the best for me, but it's up
I
there.
think most Sherlock fans favorite that episode the most. Most of them, not all of them.
It was the one time you really feel him completely challenged, but that he's enjoying
Oh,
the
yeah.
challenge.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Like it's something he's
before
been
we
waiting
get to
for.
We should
series
probably
2,
go back to series 1 for a bit.
Hey,
Is there
moderator.
anything else you want to talk about series 1? Those 3 stories: Study in Pink, Blind Baker,
Well,
Great Game.
I mean, the dialogue for me in A Study in Pink is what hooked me right away. I mean, even the way, like, he's talking to John Watson and he's basically telling him, I know your whole story, you're a veteran, this is the war you fought in, you got, the whole
Well,
thing.
and all those deductions are straight from the story.
Yeah.
But like instead of a pocket watch, they used his cell phone. Like it was
Right.
just so that
Well
one
translated.
that
Yeah.
one like 2-minute scene perfectly encapsulates the entire series and Sherlock Holmes entirely.
One thing I noticed, I think Benedict sort of tweaked his performance along the way, because in the first episode, he's a little bit more subdued. He's not quite as manic, I would say. And there's more of
It's a little more aloof.
a little more aloof.
But I think
Exactly.
part of
Isn't that
that, I
Watson
think part of
bringing
that's
it
a
out of
choice. I think,
Yeah,
I think,
that's so
I
too.
think he's used to everyone thinking he's a freak, and then Watson just kind of understands him, and so then he feels fine
Right.
to just
And he
show it.
feels
more.
Plus, you start to
comfortable.
learn more about Sherlock and how he has addictions and his own personal quirks that
Yeah.
they don't really tell you about right away.
The other thing with the modern adaptation, they don't change or alter his drug addiction.
No.
Nope.
Which they,
It's
like,
referenced.
in
It's
the other
referenced
modern
frequently.
version, in-house, they come up with a medical reason that he's addicted. But no, it's in Sherlock Holmes. It's because of his brain. Like,
Yeah.
the cocaine
And, like, right away,
helps. I
yeah.
don't know.
And right away
Is
in
it
this,
cocaine or heroin?
Heroin.
It's
Yeah,
heroin.
heroin.
It's heroin.
and right
I
away,
don't know
in,
drugs.
I don't know drugs. Right away in the Study in Pink, the cabbie challenges him on the fact that he's bored, and because that's such a big element of him, his brain is just always moving so much. He needs these challenges in his life.
Right, he gets excited
Yeah.
when somebody dies.
Right. And Mrs. Hudson gives him crap for that all the time.
Oh, Mrs. Hudson's my favorite.
She keeps saying, I'm not your housekeeper.
Yeah, she constantly comes with breakfast and
Yeah.
This is
Here's your
what I'm
breakfast, I'm not your
saying.
housekeeper.
I mean, what it... yeah.
Mrs. Hudson is one of those things that you don't really get in the stories that you're glad you get as much
Yeah.
of. And
They give
I
you
wish
more
you
of
would
it.
get more.
Well, one thing I think you see throughout season 1, and then I think it continues through the other series as well, is Sherlock discovering the people around him that I think you learn early on that they care about him, but he discovers really how much and to what extent he'll go for each person in his life. So, like just an example in The Great Game, when Moriarty has strapped John Watson with bombs.
Yep.
Just the moment in which Sherlock is able to finally rip that vest off of him. Just the facial, the story, it's instantaneous that something's been built here, even that early.
Well, I was gonna say that's one of the things I love that Jim Moriarty says to him all the time. He's like, you're like me, but you're boring. You're on the side of the angels, and it's like that's part of it. I mean, he learns all of those things, and it didn't occur to him at first. You can tell.
One of the most,
He just doesn't realize it.
No.
That's what it is.
and that's one of the most brilliant moments in season one
so
is
good.
Moriarty's appearance and how casually he just walks in. Hi, Jim Moriarty.
The Great Game is my favorite of those three.
It really was,
Oh
and
my
it was
gosh.
because of his introduction. That whole swimming pool scene was so
just
tense.
such a
Well,
high
especially,
pitch. Hi.
especially as throughout the whole episode, you get him talking through the people he's murdering. It's so creepy. And then when you finally see him, he's just this very
It's
unassuming
actually quite
little guy.
scary
And then it's
throughout
scary.
that
Like, he was
episode.
scarier
I
than
remember being
a
frightened
big,
when I saw that.
intimidating guy or like a stuffy professor.
And he just has his hands in his pocket.
He's very
And he says-
nonchalant.
he's
Yes.
unassuming and just...
But when he gets to the moment when they're having their back and forth dialogue, which I love their banter.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
so good.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. But
Yeah, I
when
mean, and Sherlock has a gun on him the whole time, but Moriarty's
he
in
doesn't
control.
care. He
Right.
doesn't
Yeah.
care. He could give no care about it. Like, seriously. And the point where he literally says to him with all that expression in his face, I will burn you. I will burn the heart out of you. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
And he fully means it. It's
Yes,
not
he
an
does.
idle threat. He is
No.
prepared to completely crush it at that moment. And then the phone rings with the Bee Gees thing. Do you mind if I get that? It's just so
And he's
love
like,
it that it-
and then he's like, oh no, please, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yes.
And then Moriarty mouths, sorry. Sorry.
Although technically that's series 2.
Oh.
Because it cuts off with Sherlock
That's true.
pointing the
that's
gun
right.
down.
That's
But-
That's right.
So after that, like, couple-year wait, and then to get to that punchline of his phone going off, I think...
I know.
Yeah.
The cliffhangers kill me.
Wow. Was that the 3-year gap?
No.
It was 2
No.
years.
No.
It was 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Okay.
Whew.
I
Yeah, watching,
saw them together. That would have been
watching that in real time was a little hard.
They say the
sometimes.
3-year gap was because of acting, but it was just so I could get that punchline. Just
Yeah, well, Benedict blew up so much after that.
Yeah, he did.
So they
I
got
mean,
a
Well,
little.
and Martin
Oh,
Freeman
Hobbit.
kind of he was blown up on a bigger scale.
Yeah,
When did he
I
film
mean,
a trilogy?
he was already a veteran actor, but now they've gone on to be in other things together, ironically. But
come all the way from doing
including
Ali
said
G in the
trilogy
house.
including said trilogy because Benedict was the voice of Smaug.
Wasn't he also some sort of sorcerer?
He was the necromancer.
Yeah, the necromancer.
Sauron.
I haven't
Oh,
seen
right.
him.
Sauron.
And he was
The,
the voice.
one of the interesting things is the chemistry on film is fantastic. I read recently that they don't even hang out at all off set.
Apparently
They
not.
don't have
They
the
don't get
usual
along.
relate. They
They
don't
don't
not
get
get
along?
along, but they're not friends.
they're more acquaintances. Like
Yeah,
they're
like
there to
work-
work
They're
together.
professional.
They're
They're
there to work together.
pure
Yeah.
professional.
Well, they seem
which
real
is-
busy, so.
But it's unusual for two actors that are in that close proximity and have that character reaction for so long to not form a
It
friendship.
kind of
Yeah.
hurts my heart a little to know that.
We want some romance, okay?
But it's part of what has made it harder for them to keep bringing it back is because they don't necessarily want to get back in each other's company to do more.
I don't know.
Don't they want to get into those characters?
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say
that's the
from what I've seen in interviews, they still really want to do the episodes. It's just when and if it works with everybody, if they have the
Yeah,
time,
that's the thing.
how many projects they have going on. It's kind of like the X-Files.
But you don't have that added element of wanting to work with a close
Oh, yeah.
friend.
Well,
Yeah.
plus
But
Stephen
you-
Moffat writes and directs a lot of them, and he has traditionally been running Doctor Who for the past 6 years.
Well,
Yeah.
and then Mark Gatiss will work on Game of Thrones and do all this other
Right.
stuff, and he writes
Yeah.
all
You
that.
should
Mark
probably
Gatiss
is
save if what and if it's going to come back and why for the
Next
next
one.
one.
I agree. So, in follow up to what everybody's been talking about with the Great Game, a couple of comments. First of all, Andrew Scott is just brilliant, which
Yes,
everybody's
yes,
hitting
he
on.
is.
So
I mean, you're
amazing.
talking about all of these hilarious quirks he's got and his sort of highly sociopathic behavior, and what a great actor to be able to pull all that off in such a convincing and entertaining way.
I would
Well, going
love,
back, sorry,
I was saying, I would
I'm just
love,
really excited.
if they don't bring Sherlock back, I would love for them to do a show based on the other side of the equation with Andrew Scott as Moriarty and showing all of the stories from that side.
Right, like how he's coming up with his plans as he's...
What he's doing,
his
how
scheming.
he's
Since
manipulating
he
things.
has such his large network of...
I'm curious, and I don't know if anyone's heard an interview or anything that would answer this, but how his character development actually happened for this series.
I
Was
haven't seen anything.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I don't know if it was more of like the director's choice, the writer's choice, or he brought this to the table.
Originally,
and said,
I know Mark Gatiss was going to be Moriarty. Like how in the first episode they introduce him, he says he's M and he's his arch nemesis. That was the Moriarty he was going to be. Like a very closer to the... But then they thought it'd be hilarious if they switched it around, which they do at the end of the episode.
Which was
brilliant.
Brilliant.
So I don't know how they came up with his interpretation, but I know originally it was going to be Mark Gatiss.
I really liked him as Mycroft.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I
really
love him
liked
as
him as
Mycroft.
Mycroft.
But I just like when he first meets Jim, Jim completely fools him. He comes in as Molly's boyfriend.
Molly's gay boyfriend.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And he says under his breath, gay, and Molly's like, what?
Oh yeah, and then he does all the deductions about how he's gay. Oh, and he left me his phone number.
Yeah. And he completely outwits him, from the get-go,
Yeah.
from the first moment that you see them on screen together.
you believe that he's going to be a challenge for Sherlock.
Yeah.
Yes.
You really buy it.
The other comment I was going to make is that even though the first episode, the premiere, A Study in Pink, was great, and I thought, oh, this is a great show, I didn't feel the wowness of it until that episode. Because then I was like, wow, those guys are good.
It's all that introductory stuff.
Yeah.
And the build-up, because there was build-up.
But I do think if you rewatch those first 2 episodes, or rewatch it,
They are
I
more
think
engaging.
that's how
Well,
I
I'd be able
felt.
to catch more, apparently.
Yeah.
Because another thing, all of the episodes are very well written, but also very dense, and there's a pace to them because that's how Sherlock's mind works.
Yeah, when Sherlock gets on his deductions and he's going back and forth and having that banter, whether it be with Moriarty or the cabbie or whomever, Benedict is on that dialogue.
Not to mention the fact that all the things he's talked about, you've seen it in the episode, you just didn't register it the way he did. So you're like, oh yeah.
Well,
The light bulbs keep going off.
and that's it's that classic, quote from Sherlock. We all see it, but he didn't, you don't
You
observe.
see, but you
Right.
didn't
You
observe.
observe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they make that a reality with...
Well, because I just rewatched the Hound of Baskerville's episode, and the character keeps saying to him, "How did you know that?" And he goes, "I don't know it. I noticed it." And it's just all those lines added in there are so great. It just adds to the whole environment of the show.
Is there anything else you want to say about Series 1? Because I feel the push to Series 2.
Sorry,
we
I
didn't
wasn't
talk
trying
about all
to.
the characters in Series 1.
Yeah,
We didn't talk
I
about
think we could
Lestrade
still
at all.
talk. Yeah, we
Or
could.
Yeah, we
Anderson.
haven't talked
Anderson.
about
Oh, that's
Lestrade.
true.
We
What do
should
you
talk-
think about Rupert Graves' Lestrade?
I like him.
I really like
He's
him.
really like him.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too, and the first time around, you don't notice he's really not in the second episode, if not at all.
I don't think.
No, he's
No.
not at all.
Yeah.
They
You
didn't
don't
plan on
notice.
having
I
him
didn't
be a
notice it
big
the first
part.
time because you just see him in one episode, and then maybe he's not coming back.
His balance of awe and complete annoyance at Sherlock is so well done.
And the way he kind of tells people, look, you've got to respect him, but you don't have to like him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
that
yeah, because
character.
all of his coworkers aren't fond
Oh,
of him,
wow,
so he's
yeah.
constantly having to justify why he chooses to have him there.
Well, he gets credit for all these
Yeah.
crimes that
He
are getting
does,
solved.
yeah.
That's kind of his upside.
That's true.
That's his upside.
Sherlock
That's why
has
he
something to
tolerates
do.
it.
That's
Yeah.
But it's
Well,
like
I mean-
their relationship grows too.
And that character in the stories is obnoxious. Like, he is
Yes.
not a
Yeah.
likable
Yes.
character. And this way, they kind of transfer that obnoxiousness to his 2 underlings.
Yes.
Yes.
But then still kept, why does this
Yeah.
guy keep working with Sherlock Holmes? That doesn't make him seem like a dick.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what series
Except
it
it's
is.
a British word for that.
I don't know what series it's in. But
Thank you, Spencer.
You're very welcome. I knew it was him saying
We're all less confused Americans now.
I mean, I just couldn't think of
Ooh, harsh.
Wow.
I did that to myself.
I don't know where we were.
No, series 1. I still
Okay.
like it.
I like how the moderator has control.
I mean, the Blind Banker is my least favorite episode, but I still really like it, and I still enjoyed the mystery. I still liked the characters. I mean, yeah, it doesn't come off as strongly as A Study in Pink or The Great Game, but I still really enjoyed it. And there's elements that are quite mysterious about it. All that over, the jade pin.
Circus assassins, though. I mean,
Isn't that the one?
Okay, of all the things you watch, and that's what you're going to complain about?
He gets enough circus assassins from other shows.
from Art Gotham.
Oh, lordy.
That's for the Gotham podcast, which the whole panel is in the
tying it
room.
all together. I'm tying it all together.
I see.
Well, but there are Batman essentially comes from Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
The whole detective element of Batman is so lifted right from Sherlock Holmes, so that you can make those parallels between them.
I like, too, how in that episode...
I want to disagree with you a little bit, but you had some...
No, I mean, they've
it
always
is true.
Bob
It is
Kane.
true.
Bob Kane.
I know.
He's the great detective.
Yeah,
In fact, there's an episode of one of the cartoons where he goes back in time and works with Sherlock.
yeah.
Really
Batman
quite.
goes back in
What?
time?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's in one of the cartoon episodes.
I mean, in the
Quite
comics too. But
Well,
even in the comics, when they do flashbacks to him training, he's always his detective skills. They always do this guy who's in England who's exactly like Sherlock Holmes, who taught Bruce Wayne everything he knows.
Oh.
I love
says
Kyle's
elementary,
enthusiasm with the deer
The
stuff.
game is afoot, right?
Yeah.
Well, isn't it even like Star Trek: The Next Generation? They do some Sherlock Holmes episodes.
Yes, they do.
Elementary Dear Data? Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Data
Data
wears that
Sherlock
hat.
Holmes, and then there's a hologram of Moriarty.
Who takes over the ship?
Because he wants to not be a hologram anymore. He's so smart, he becomes next level conscious.
Yeah.
And because the holodeck has
Oh.
a 50% actual working rate.
That's fun.
But this isn't the next gen podcast.
It's not, but
Someday,
But
but
if
it
you
does.
are, yeah.
It is cross. I don't want to say cultural, cross
It
genre.
does.
Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, really, Sherlock. He's influenced everything. Like every
Yeah.
form of literature that's come out since, every form of TV. I mean, real world
It's influenced the
police
Smurfs?
police detective work was drastically changed just by those
Because of
stories.
Sherlock Holmes.
I think part of what makes this show so successful is that it's held to such a high standard already because of the subject matter. It would be very easy to try and modernize it and completely screw it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they didn't.
No.
No, but then they also set the bar very high for themselves with the quality that they gave us in
Yeah.
season one. And each season since, or series since, they have to top it or keep it at that very high level.
And they do.
speaking of which,
Thank
Series 2.
you caught where I was going.
So Series 2, as Kristen L has already mentioned, featured possibly the three most famous Sherlock Holmes stories. They were the episodes were called A Scandal in Belgravia, The Hounds of Baskerville, and The Reichenbach Fall. What did we think about these? Because they were pretty big time. These
I loved Scandal in Belgrade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
That
Same here.
is my favorite episode of the whole series.
Really?
I can't
Yes.
agree.
It's not my
See,
favorite in the
One
whole
of-
series,
One
but
of my
it's top
two.
three.
One of my
It is
two.
top three.
I don't think I'd ever be able to pick a
See,
favorite
it's
episode.
my favorite of the series.
That's
Everyone says that because they like Irene, but for me, that has the best Watson-Sherlock relation because you see how much Watson wants to protect him from this.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the part of it I like the best.
Yes.
I do too, actually.
Seriously though, is this the one where Mycroft drags him to Buckingham? And
Yes.
they-
Yes.
Which is one of my favorite
That part I
scenes
love.
Oh,
when he
yeah.
is on the couch in Buckingham Palace in the sheet.
In his bed sheet.
And Watson just looks at him and puts his hands up like, "What are you doing?" And Sherlock just shrugs.
He's like,
And there's
he's
this
like,
black
guy
I
says,
don't
Are you
care.
wearing pants? Nope.
nope.
And he's just
they
fine
laugh
with it. Like
about
Watson
it.
gets it.
Watson just gets it.
Well, it was
They
one of
laugh
those petulant moments that that you
Yeah.
see the childlike aspect of Sherlock, where these two guys come in, disturb everything he's doing, so he's like, "Fine, I'll go with you, but I'm not getting
He's like, I'm
dressed."
going to
Yeah.
do it the way I
And
want
even
to.
once he gets there and he's got his pile of neatly clothes right in front of him,
Nope.
nope, in a sheet.
But then what's funny is once Watson gets there, there's this whole interchange. They just have a look, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Words.
silent interchange.
Yeah.
No words, just
It's a look that makes it hard to believe that the actors aren't best friends.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
right.
the acting is so solid.
This episode opens with basically a parade of potential clients that on its own I love. It felt like the
Yes.
stories,
Yep.
and then that it pays off at the end
Yes.
is just what
Yeah.
makes this
Yes.
show amazing to beyond amazing for me. I don't know if it's my favorite, but
One of those
this
things
episode
that
had
could
so
so
many good
easily
things.
just be an introduction. and
Yeah,
then
it could have been perfect by
comes back
itself.
around.
Well, and that little montage showing how Sherlock gets famous in the Deer Stalker is so well done. On top of everything else they crammed into this one episode.
They introduced the Deerstalker
Yes.
and
Yeah.
his disdain for
There
it.
are
Kyle's favorite part
so
of the
many beautiful moments in that episode.
Just the public image, yeah.
This is also the one where we find out the blog is sort of blown up a little bit, and he's getting a little bit of paparazzi following him around.
He's getting groupies.
Groupies, yes.
Which is what would have happened.
I would also say one of Sherlock's best moments with Molly is in that episode.
Oh,
At the Christmas party.
Yeah.
Where he completely embarrasses
Annihilates
her,
her.
annihilates her,
He
not
doesn't even
realizing
realizing he's doing it.
Yeah, and that switch where he suddenly is, oh, wait, this was for me. God, I'm such an ass. That
Yeah.
was just a beautiful moment of storytelling.
Well, it's that part of his sociopath, characteristics. Like, all the people around him have to help him. Like, Watson all the time is helping him realize how people are reacting. Like, how should I be feeling? Sentiment? What's this, He's constantly correcting him so he can be like, oh, okay, I get it.
And there's reference to how Sherlock doesn't even realise that Watson's left several times in that episode.
Yeah, because
He
he's
left
so
2
much
hours
in
ago.
his mind
What?
palace.
And it's also funny in that episode to introduce the fact that as bad as Sherlock is about not noticing things, Watson's kind of just as bad because he can't even keep his girlfriends apart.
That was a very funny
That
part.
was a funny moment.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It was the last one.
I'll walk a dog. I don't have a dog.
That was the last one.
So, we can talk about Irene. I don't love her, I'm sorry.
No, I don't either.
Okay.
I like how clever she was. They did a good
Yes.
job with
I
that.
agree with that.
Which is how she's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that she truly did best him, which,
Many
one of the lines I really enjoyed delivering as Sherlock Holmes is, I've been beaten 3 times, twice by men, and now once by a woman.
Is that in a story?
Yeah.
I know
Yes.
I know
Yes,
that
it
her
is.
beating him is in it,
Yeah.
but I didn't know.
That line of
Yeah.
dialogue on the play is lifted
That
directly from
is-
the story.
Yeah.
It
I
is
mean,
from
I love
Scandal
the way
Bohemia,
she's
too.
introduced in the beginning of the story right away is as that's what she calls herself, the woman.
woman.
Yes.
Woman, yeah.
And that's obviously one of the
Although I
famous...
felt like her introducing herself that way kind of takes away from Sherlock giving her that title. Because, that's why she's so important in his world.
I don't
She
think
is
so.
the woman in
Yeah.
his
Yeah,
life.
Is the woman.
because I don't think so. Because still at the end, you have that moment after they've gone through the series of events that they do together. Right at the end, when he's kind of saved her, and he's still holding that phone, saying, the woman. Like, Benedict still makes it that special connection that you get from the story, I think.
Well, and I think it was done purposefully that she called herself the woman because it's a modernized context. So
Right.
the reason why he goes on about it in the stories is we're in Victorian England at that point.
Right.
It was kind of a novelty back then.
Right.
So,
The interactions between her and him are very, very good in the episode, too. I think really the disagreeable part was she didn't need that sexualization.
right.
Yeah,
That's
the
what
Could
doctor-
have been completely done without it.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessary.
To me, that almost took away a little bit from her the fact that she's supposedly portrayed as an intellectual equal to Sherlock to some extent. And he actually says in the episode at one point, I can't remember the exact line, but something about
Take your
You
clothes
take-
off. You take your clothes off too, like,
to
basically
make an impression.
Yes.
Yeah.
To make an impression.
He sees right through it. Like, he doesn't fully understand it right away, but once he's thought about it and he's not confused by how she's out clevering him,
He does.
he
deduces
acknowledges
that.
it.
Once
Yeah.
once he's sussed her out at the
Yes.
end and completely destroys her, that victory he takes
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
last scene
was
like,
just
well, not last scene, but
stunning.
close to
It was
last
like,
scene.
Close to
okay, you
last
beat
scene,
me,
yeah.
but now I'm going to show you your flaw because I've worked you out.
He's like, I
Yeah.
figured. Well, that moment when he says to her, and she's like, "Oh, you poor man. How could you think I could be interested in you?" And he said, "Because I took your pulse." And then she's just like, boom, you can see her face drop.
yeah, you almost see the blood
Yeah.
drain from her
You do.
face as he
Literally.
then takes her
And
apart
As
bit
much
by
as you
bit by
can on
bit.
screen.
Yeah, and you see, but then immediately, because she's so clever too and never shows her cards, that's just her character. And then to finally see that emotion from her come out so vividly, I love that part. I think she did a good job, because I don't like her in other things. She was terrible in True Blood. But
What was she in True Blood?
she was that fairy person in the fairy world. I forget her name.
where a fairy person belongs.
Yeah, because I hated that part, so I don't remember
You
a lot
blocked
of
it from your memory.
Yeah, like literally. But
I
that,
didn't even remember she was in True Blood, so clearly it was so memorable.
that part where he's calling her out, because the whole thing around her phone, her whole life is on her phone. That's
Yeah.
what gives her protection. And, he's like, you made a mistake. The one thing that you let in was your heart. And then, him pointing it out to her. So,
Sherlock.
Sherlock!
If you could all see Hilary's shirt, go to Instagram.
Man, it's on Instagram.
At Couch Potatoes Unite.
I mean, and the whole episode, he's trying out different passwords. He's like, I got this chick. I know that's what it is.
And I do love his enthusiasm every time he thinks he got it.
Oh,
Yeah.
He's testing
Every
it out.
time.
Smarmy.
It's suddenly all of it.
He's like,
Yep.
if he thinks it's his address, like the number of people who've watched or
And
looked at the
John's
blog.
blog counter
Yeah.
when it
Yeah.
freezes. The best moment, though, is where he gets her to punch it in.
Yeah, and
And
she
she's like, I have
outsmarted
you now, I've spoofed the phone.
And she's like, just kidding. Do you think
Yeah,
I'd
you
really
do-
be that stupid?
Yeah, I told you I live
That
with
was
this
a
phone.
great
It's
moment.
everything
Yeah.
about me. You think I wouldn't realise it's not the right phone in my hand?
Yeah.
So she beats him again.
And
The
just
cerebral
yeah.
back and forth is fantastic.
And you really don't know who's going to have the final victory throughout. You really don't know.
You don't. It kind of ends up equal. I think it kind of ends up equal in the end. But
The fact that he goes to
Yeah.
the lengths he does to save her, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that they tied her with Moriarty and that she's the one that called him in the finale.
Oh, yeah.
I did like that part. I don't even know how to articulate this because it was very unpopular when I brought it up, but I love the writing and the direction in this episode that we're talking about. But there's just something, I don't know what
I think
it
you
is.
need to go back and rewatch
I
it.
think
Maybe
you do.
so.
Yeah, Kylie, come on.
Hey,
What is this?
I think she was probably caught more. I think she was distracted by the person playing Irene and some of the sexualization that Kristen
maybe
T
that was
talking about.
part of it. I mean, on the one hand, my brain is saying, I guess she would be a dominatrix. I guess.
See,
It's the
But on the other
it's the one modernization that is the hardest to.
It
Yeah.
seems to not fit with
Because
me.
it feels like-
it
Right,
jars.
but what else could she be?
I don't know.
A lot of
I
things.
just think that he really wanted to emphasize that conflict with Sherlock because that immediately challenges that part of him that he doesn't understand. Because that's the way I always have looked at it. I mean, because the first moment she walks in, she's naked, and all he sees is the question marks. He's like, I don't know how to read you.
Right.
And and there's a couple comments when Mycroft says, because they're talking about that, she has some inappropriate pictures of a high profile person, and, they start making comments about how this is a case strongly to do with sex, and Mycroft's like, how would you know? Like, how would this,
That moment where he evaluates, or tries to evaluate her, and just the question marks pop
Yeah.
up. One of the things I really liked about that is he started to question himself to the point where he turned around and looked at Watson so he could
Saw
make sure his
Watson.
evaluation
Right.
skills were
Yeah.
still
he's
there.
like, am I broken
Yeah,
or something?
like,
Like,
what happened?
yeah.
So then he looks at Watson, he looks back at Irene,
Okay.
question mark. Okay, so...
And then even still, they immediately have that banter. They already know who each other are. They've both been informed. They're waiting to challenge each other. And it immediately starts to come out in little...
Well, she got those texts saying, I've
She did.
sent you a plaything.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly. But then eventually, I mean, he starts to figure her out because, he notices, her measurements and all of those things. I don't know. I just like the back and forth. You need to rewatch it. You're being harsh.
My top 5 episodes don't even include this one.
Wow.
Ooh.
Sorry.
Out of the 6 episodes?
Including 3.
Oh.
Yeah.
So out of 9,
Yeah.
this doesn't even
Well,
need to
10
Well,
with
10
the
with the
Christmas
Christmas
special.
special.
And the
Can't
Christmas
wait to
special
talk
is
about
one
it.
of the top 5. That's probably number 1, actually.
But again, the Christmas special is only as good as it is because of the
rest
other
of it.
episodes.
Yeah.
That's true. 2 of my top 5 are the next 2 in this series, which are the Hounds of Baskerville and the Wreck of
Really?
My Fog. Yeah.
Really? So see, yeah.
Part of it is because the Hounds of Baskerville is one of my favorite Sherlock Holmes stories. I think it's one of the
See,
creepier ones.
That's
It
the
is.
one where I disapprove of most of the changes the most. Like, Stapleton is one of he's one of the best Sherlock Holmes villains there is. And, anytime there's, a non-canon Sherlock Holmes stories, he always ends up reappearing because he's just such a good villain. And then there are changes to this one where Stapleton was the mom of the daughter with the bunny, and it was this other guy. Everything. I don't know. It was I still enjoyed it, but I thought it was the least successful adaptation of the story.
I think part of that comes from them not wanting to be too predictable.
Yeah.
So
It is the
they made
most
some
well-known
changes.
story.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the themes
That's
of it though are the same: paranoia, fear. It just they translated supernatural fear to kind of government conspiracy and.
But it still
all
felt
this.
still get
super. It felt
yeah.
the most different out of
It
these
really
6.
did.
Yeah.
from the
That's
rest
why
of
I
them.
liked it. Because I thought, okay, yes, maybe they were forcing this unpredictable piece of it a little bit, but I thought, as I was watching the episode, I thought, okay, this is not the same. Where are they going with this? And as I was watching it, I got sucked into the mystery. Probably more so in some instances than like a couple of one-offs in Series 1. I thought, oh, they actually distracted me from the Hounds of Baskerville Sherlock Holmes story. So I wasn't quite as affected as you were, but I also am not quite as invested as you are with that villain or whatever. I was sitting here expecting it to be closer to the novelization or the story presentation of it than what it actually came out to be. And then, of course, I like that government conspiracy thing. I like where it went with that.
Well, the story, Sherlock isn't in the story.
No.
It was
he's
originally
not,
written
yeah.
as a different mystery.
Watson
and then
is the
because
one who's
Sherlock was his
there
bread and
Yeah.
butter,
so
he added
long.
Sherlock Holmes
Yep.
to it.
Yeah.
Well, and I like that there's a lot of Watson.
Well, I think there's a lot of Sherlock in the,
in the
show. The
but
actual,
in the book,
The actual
The
book,
book.
he's
Not.
in the beginning and the end.
he doesn't go to Baskerville for most
No,
of it.
he doesn't.
Well, he's technically there as somebody else in disguise.
That's
I
true.
do also like how the show brings out those elements still, like, because I was gonna go back to the blind banker when you see like the physical, like when he's like outsmarting the bullets that are coming at him and stuff.
That's what I was thinking of earlier.
Yeah.
That you see his physical prowess.
You see his physical prowess, his addictions, like his his abilities with all science, playing his violin, like shooting the wall because he's bored. Yeah, and so like in that, the disguises.
Of course, I haven't
That-
seen Series 4 yet. Now I'm trying to think. So there might be a change, but...
No, all those things happen.
No, I
No,
know
she means in her order.
favorite.
And the
Oh, your
favorite
favorite.
episodes, yeah.
Oh, I
There is
see.
one episode in Series 4 that is just phenomenal.
All right.
One of my
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. She's gonna have an aneurysm. Knock it off.
I
Well,
will.
but when
I mean, when they're in the environment with the mist and everything, like, I still get that same, that
You get
creepy
that feeling,
feeling.
yeah.
Uneasiness is what comes to mind.
And when Watson's trapped in the lab because he's under
Yeah.
the influence
Yes.
of it, that's really, really...
Although I didn't
good.
like,
Because
I
you
didn't like
find
the
out-
reveal that Sherlock was just kind of fucking
Messing with him?
with him.
Yeah.
But
It made
it's
me,
really-
it made me angry because I was so...
Sherlock, I don't, in the books even, I don't think he would do that to Watson. I think he'd do it to somebody else, an acquaintance, but I don't think he would do that to Watson.
I guess I'm on the fence. I didn't like it either, but
I still think it's
still
more of a
think he
modern
might
take
have.
on their relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't seem like a good reveal, and maybe it's just it wasn't pulled
Well,
off right.
There
I
were
don't know.
lots of little modernisations to the relationship in the first episode of season 2 where Sherlock asks him to punch him in the face and he
Yes.
doesn't register it and he's like, oh well, that's what I usually hear when you're speaking, but I didn't realise. So there's lots of little modernisations that work with that character relationship.
And then Irene points out, what did she say? She makes
Whoever hit you must really care.
Like,
They
exactly,
avoided
yeah.
your...
Yeah.
And he was wearing the priest costume, which I have a special
Nice
because
little
that's
nod,
right
yeah.
from the story.
Yeah.
right,
that
one of
the-
the disguised moments.
Yeah,
when
disguised
he's trying-
moments. The Baker Street Irregulars had
Yeah.
staged a whole thing with him as a
Oh,
priest.
and the
getting
fake
beaten up.
fire
Yeah.
still. Was
Yeah.
It was interesting because this show, with the fans of the show, talked a lot about the John Watson Sherlock Holmes relationship, and there are the people that want, John Locke. They want the relationship. What I enjoyed was the way that the show would kind of hint and then make a joke out of
Yes.
whatever
Yeah.
was being said. It was almost like the creators were kind of laughing at those people.
Oh,
saying,
yeah. They
don't you
know.
understand Sherlock Holmes and John Watson?
Yeah.
Like, don't you get it? Don't you understand
They
these people?
definitely read online reviews
Yes.
and blogs in the writers'
Oh, yeah.
rooms.
Because there's even a lot of cartoons where Sherlock is an otter and John Watson is a hedgehog doing things. It's this whole weird thing.
Yeah, it's
What?
You know a lot about that.
What are you watching,
Chopped
Kristen?
up. Yeah.
Back to Hounds of Baskerville, though.
Yeah, sorry, my
Interesting.
neck still hurts from whipping around looking at Kristen. What are you talking about?
I mean,
Tumblr's a weird place, guys.
That's true.
the idea that Sherlock Sherlock was messing with Watson does not bother me because it's not done vindictively. It's done experimentally, and
Watson
that's a
still
continuation.
understands.
Yeah, he still understands, and it's a continuation of how the series started.
But then he also says too, like, oh, so you mean you were wrong because you thought it was in the sugar?
Exactly.
Part of my point about that though is
that.
he didn't know what that chemical would do long term, and then he just doused his friend, or was trying to douse his friend with the sugar. They didn't know what it was.
But he also explains repetitively that he's a sociopath, and he says it to Watson.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just saying, this is in the same episode. He tells Watson, "You're my only friend." He's still messing with
But
him.
he's still learning to maneuver those things. Like having, I think, the close relationship with Watson. They're still developing.
Yeah, I think
That's
part
the
of
way
it
I
too
feel
is you're
learning
looking
a
at
friend.
it with hindsight. You've seen more of the series, and then looking back at the Baskerville episode, it does seem a little cruel if you think about it. But at that point in the series, I hadn't seen what came after it yet, so I was like, "Wow, that was kind of funny." And it isn't in the sugar.
There are some really nice injections of humour throughout.
Yeah.
Yes, there really are.
It's a funny show without being a comedy.
It
It's
is.
just it's entertaining.
It is a very
smart writing.
dramatic, suspenseful, mysterious show. But yes, that comedy is
Smart
very
comedy.
prevalent.
Well, how they can take a really, really tense moment like the swimming pool scene with Moriarty and Sherlock and break it up, take some of that tension away, give you a laugh, but then get right back into the tension. It's not easy to do.
Which is, I think, a lot of what that scene was about, because the Baskerville episode is pretty tense. And I think they needed to stick something in there.
Well,
they
that's
didn't
what-
have Moriarty doing it, so...
Well, they did have Lestrade for a lot of the comedy. Like, one of my favorite scenes is in that episode when he's there and he's checking in under the name Greg, and Sherlock Holmes is like, "Oh, why are you undercover with that ridiculous name Greg?"
I love a lot of their interchanges, because sometimes Lestrade realizes what's happening, and sometimes he doesn't. He's like,
Plus that
"Oh."
joke pays off, and the last line in season 4 pays off for that second episode.
Yes, well, that's what I'm talking
Spoilers!
That's what I was just going to ask.
It's okay to have little rants.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's such a little thing that
As you go through watching
Kylie's brains
season
explode.
1 and 2,
Well, it's true. It'll provide that connectiveness that the show does, and for people who like to listen to our series of podcasts.
Okay, but...
Everything connects.
Yeah. She
Rem-
didn't say anything specific.
No.
Or he didn't say
remember
anything specific.
in season 2, episode 1, there is a scene where Sherlock is sitting there with a newspaper talking to Watson, and it's very prevalent.
Yes.
The picture and headline on that newspaper is a big deal in the series as a whole.
It is.
And you don't find out for 2 more seasons.
It's very true.
Crazy.
I have to watch
Which
it,
is
and
years.
then I have to rewatch the whole
Yeah.
thing back to back. Really?
It's something that we're actually enjoying doing, is going back and watching it all again now that we've seen all of it, because there are these
There's
Easter
threads.
eggs and
Threads,
threads
absolutely.
that are...
I rewatched
You don't
it so
even
many
notice
times.
how obvious they're making it to you that this
I'm
is
that
something
person.
important until much later
Until
on, and
it
then you're
happens.
That
like,
happens within an
Wow!
episode sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
not surprised.
If all TV was like this, I would probably watch it more.
Wow! Big statements over
There's a
there.
lot of good
I know.
shows out there. They might
Bold
not be Sherlock.
Yeah.
there's been very little that's of this quality.
Agreed.
Wow. Nick didn't say something like
Spicy.
Yeah.
The show is like the closest thing to perfection I've seen in television.
So let's talk about the Reichenbach Fall, because at the time, because I believe the 3-year drought came after this.
It did.
Yeah.
It was
With-
so hard.
It was not fun.
So hard.
I just watched
That's
the
what she
next
said.
episode.
Same.
So from the perspective of the drought people, because they're the ones who watched it live, talk about this episode and what it meant to you at that time.
Were you at all like the people in the episode?
I had so many emotions. You know, I will say one thing about that episode is I really feel Sherlock's frustration throughout that right along with him. I'm like, damn, this guy has got his number and he's not holding back at this point.
Yeah.
And I feel that in everything that happens to him. Like, this is one of those times where Sherlock's a little bit behind everything that's happening. And as he's realizing what's happening to him, he's like, you can see that he's not quite sure what to do until the end.
What I loved about that is it's a flip of the story. The story, the final problem that's based on, it's Sherlock closing in on Moriarty. Moriarty going from brilliant to desperate, and they reversed it
Yes.
while keeping the same themes was amazing. I mean, it's a great writing.
Because isn't this the episode where we see Moriarty in with the crown jewels just sitting there?
Yeah.
That is one of
brilliantly funny
it's
casually
one of my
walks
favorite
in.
moments of the
He's
whole
like a
show.
tourist when he's first walking in.
Yep.
He's just walking right into this place.
Chewing his gum.
Yep. Taunting Sherlock, telling people to come get him. You know, it's so amazing.
But I just love seeing him there with the you know the
crown.
and the
mitre.
scepter, and he's like, what took you guys so long?
And he references it later. He's like, yeah, man, the person who has all of these connections, man, they king, and don't I look good in a crown?
How do you guys
Just
feel about that
amazing.
reveal that we think it's this code that's unlocking things, and Sherlock thinks it is, and we just agree with him, and then we find out he had people in there that he either paid
Well,
off or told to
I
do.
thought that just really great for Moriarty. He's so brilliant that he knows people.
He knows their thought process before they
They'll
do.
try to overthink him and then completely miss what he's
And miss
doing.
the simple.
Yeah.
And that Sherlock
That's
is the
Sherlock,
one who missed the
absolutely.
simple.
Yeah.
It's so brilliant.
Which is interesting because Sherlock is constantly calling out people for missing the simple.
Well, and you almost feel like, because I think he calls him an idiot or a moron at the end. Like, you're not getting it yet, Moriarty does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, you are an idiot. Why didn't you think of that? Not that I thought of it. I hold Sherlock to a higher esteem.
Stop judging!
No, but it's true. It kind of happens. You're like, oh, wait, after seeing all the series of events.
Just him using Sherlock's own personality against him, his voice, how he lords himself over everybody, and how he turned that into the thing that kind of brings Sherlock down.
Yeah, he's cocky. He doesn't, because that journalist, I just watched that episode, and that smarmy frickin' stupid journalist who, she basically is a little butthurt because she tries to go get a personal interview directly from Sherlock Holmes, and he calls her out on being a smarmy journalist. And later, she falls for the story that Jim has given her, which is that he's not actually Jim. Jim doesn't exist. He's an actor. And Sherlock's been harassing him this whole time.
I mean, yes, I agree with all of that. I think this is, again, one of my favorite episodes of the whole series because there's such a windy role reversal, one to the other, to the other, to the other, to
Very
the other.
much so. And
Totally on a pendulum.
Yes, exactly. And there is
Good
the sense of
description.
Sherlock always being a step behind Moriarty, but there's also that he's still a step ahead of everybody else. So you're trying to, where am I in this story half the time?
And at the very end of that episode, you are literally left sitting on your couch with your mouth wide open.
Yes!
With a what?
And even though I knew I was going to watch the first episode of season 3 very soon afterwards,
Yeah, 20
I was
minutes
like,
later, you got to watch it. 3 years!
3 years.
But I was
Feels
still
good.
agape.
You know how many times people rewatch the last half an hour of that and be like, okay, how did he survive that fall? How did he survive? There has to be clues somewhere.
how
Where is
did
it?
he?
Where is
Yeah,
it?
because they're not going to kill him.
They can't kill him.
Well, they
He's
showed
got
it.
the name of the show.
And they showed him alive at the end at the cemetery, so it's like you knew he lived. It was just a
But
matter of...
how did he do
How
it?
did he do it?
Well,
they-
and part of it,
And we
too, was
can't
did
talk about
Moriarty
it.
Yeah.
survive?
We can't talk about it.
Say it again.
Half of my question was, and if it's in Series 4 that resolves this, and I think it might be, don't answer. Half of my thing was, Moriarty just put a gun on himself. What does that mean?
That's all. Half of us
Stay
answer
tuned
the truth,
and
and
keep
half of us
watching.
answer the lie.
Yeah, to tell the truth. Let's play that game.
I don't want to play that game.
Feel free to
That-
end
I would-
after you've watched season 4 immediately.
Oh,
That
can we get
whole
Kylie's
scene-
prediction on the
I don't want to
podcast?
predict.
Oh, how about we podcast season 4's final episode where we're all in the room with Kylie when she's watching it for the first time.
I'll be on the spot.
Live video stream.
But
I
it will
like
be
being the moderator where I
fantastic.
can put the spot elsewhere.
I will moderate that while we watch you watch it.
Oh, Jesus.
It would be so
It's
much
so
fun.
good.
Here's that villain again right there.
I know.
No, I like that idea.
See,
He's the Joker. to
villain
my
number
Batman.
2.
Oh, Kyle wants to be bad.
I'm trying not to.
He just wants to be a crap.
Yeah.
That whole last scene, though, oh my god. gosh, I was again so scared, like in The Great Game. I was like,
amazing.
what is going to happen with this?
Yeah.
There are very few things that leave me, I'm a little desensitized. I mean,
She said this before.
but there are seriously very few things that have left me on this, literally, the edge of my seat. Like, what is going to happen with this? That was one of those moments.
It gave
That
me
moment
chills
for me
and
felt-
also numbness at the same time.
Yes.
that moment for me is one of, you remember where you were in certain life events that happened. That moment for me was one of those moments. I remember how I was sitting. I remember how the room felt. Because it was just so intense.
And
This is a wonderful. So I like to kind of lay on the couch, and I have my TV mounted up higher, and I'm watching the episode, and I was all like, poing!
I was like this.
She
I'm
does
literally
that too
on the
when
edge
she's
of it.
excited.
Me
She
too.
loses her mind. I've seen this so many times.
and not to give anything away, but Series 4 does that again. Like, the
Oh,
show
yeah.
knows what
Yeah.
it's doing. They take as much time as they want if they're gonna
The
give that
interesting
level of
thing is in
entertainment.
the original stories of Doyle, when he wrote the final problem, Sherlock was going to be done.
Yep.
There was that public outcry.
Hello, public outcry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
And
his
then-
best friend.
Which is awesome
his
that
best
it existed
His
before.
best friend, Mr. J.M. Barrie.
Yeah.
But then
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, I love
Because
their best friends.
I'm a huge Peter Pan. I'm also
Just
a
like Tolkien and Lewis Carroll.
I mean, literally, I have a language degree. Like, my bachelor's is in language, English and Spanish, and so many
Brag.
literature. I'm just saying.
How's bragging camp going?
I was just, oh my gosh, brothers. Jeez.
I just gave it Kristen a high
Kristen, you come here. No, you come here. That's right.
Shorts! I have to lean a long way!
Don't give them ammunition.
That just made it even better.
They already make
Here.
short jokes about me. It's fine.
That's true.
Nothing is sacred.
No.
Anyway, so I'm a classic lit nerd too. I love Peter Pan. And then when I met Kyle, and he's such a Sherlock Holmes nerd, and then we were like swapping like nerd stories about J.M. Barrie and Arthur Conan Doyle. And so yeah, J.M.
Like-
Barrie basically told him, he's like, "What's wrong with you?"
Well, he
was-
wrote a little Sherlock Holmes pastiche where in the story Sir Arthur Conan Doyle kills Sherlock Holmes and instantly all his wealth and riches disappear. And it's really funny.
it's really funny.
He's basically like, why are you? Because there came a point I think where he was maybe a little tired of writing it, and
It was Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. I'm sorry.
He wanted to write historical novels.
yeah, he wanted to switch. He wanted to switch gears, and J.M. Barrie was like, "What's wrong with you?" Like,
Everybody always asked him about Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, that's all they
Yeah.
wanted
All
to
he
talk
ever
about.
heard, and he just got tired.
Yeah, I mean,
It was
that's,
the Harry Potter of its day.
well, right.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing happened to J.M. Barrie, but he kind of accepted it because he wasn't so successful with other things. I mean, he was a playwright before he created Peter Pan.
Right.
But once that happened, he just kind of, I mean, I don't think he always loved it either, but he just kind of accepted it more so. Like, that's going to be what I'm most
and then
famous
you also have to think, like, we had to wait 3 years for that resolution. It was like 8 years before he brought back Sherlock Holmes from like, so imagine
that's
that
where
way.
That's where I was going.
And really thinking
Yeah.
Sherlock's
Here's
dead that entire time.
Well, people couldn't even watch an episode. They had to read a part of each story.
Yes.
And
Yes,
at
wait.
least we
Weekly
saw
thing.
Sherlock in the end,
Yeah.
in the cemetery. Like, they had nothing.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
disappeared
He just
into the
disappeared.
That's
force.
true. I didn't think of it like that.
And I mean,
That's
even
true.
back then, people would wear the black armbands for months because like everyone was mourning Sherlock Holmes' death.
Yeah.
Well,
Bunch of nerds.
That was but that was
Hey.
entertainment.
Yeah.
Listen, you. If Dr. Beverly Crusher died, where would you be?
They
She's
took
getting
her away
old.
for a season.
She came back.
Stupid
Oh my, what's
That
Pulaski.
black armband.
Yeah, you nerd. Anyways,
So the Reichenbach fall.
it's
Based
so
on Final
good.
Problem.
It's so good.
It's
very
There's
good.
so many twists and turns.
Very
It's
great.
But they're
wonderful.
in so many ways they're like simple. They're so it's just simple things that
Simple things
are
done
well written,
well.
well
Yeah.
executed.
And I never saw Moriarty shooting himself. I mean,
I
he's
didn't either.
such an egomaniac.
Yeah.
Like, it was completely unpredictable. I mean, I think the audience had the same reaction Sherlock had because he wasn't expecting that either.
No, no. I mean, and there's sort of an egomaniacal bend always to this character. So the fact that he would even contemplate that as an out. Now, no, I don't know what happens later, but at the time, contemplating that as an out, because everybody's got expressions, and you think I don't see them. And this one over here.
I'm actually staying mum on seasons 3 and 4.
He's being better behaved with his wifey here.
He needs to come around and sit. Around, yeah.
You're welcome.
I was trying to work out if there was actually any truth to that. I don't think there is.
No,
I just think
there's a little bit.
Bear in mind, I did record a podcast this morning and was warned many, many times about spoilers, so I was trying hard not to.
She was already on you.
You've had the newspaper to the nose already.
Weird insight.
No, the newspaper to the nose. We were walking downtown one day and we saw a guy wearing like man-prees, and I said, someone needs to roll up a newspaper and smack him in the nose like a naughty puppy. And that's where that comes from. There's no weird insight, Nick.
No.
Well, there is, because there's a big joke.
Okay, it's an inside joke, but there's no weird insight.
Okay.
That's a stick of lettuce. Or celery. Something.
Is there anything else you want to say about Series 2?
You said yet that it's so good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we all love it, and then it's smart
so,
writing.
Yeah, there's just so many scenes that I like. And like, I like when they end up in that, I don't know if it's the journalist's, like, apartment or flat or whatever.
It's her flat with...
But then, like, he's hearing about how, she's basically challenging Sherlock on the fact that, Sherlock doesn't have it all figured out the way he thinks he does. And then, the person who's not Jim, but is Jim, walks in and he's like, what's happening here, And he's like, don't harass me, and Sherlock's like, no, you are, and even Watson, he's like, no, you are Moriarty, you just strapped a bomb to me, don't you even try to pretend.
And the fact he's even dressed differently, and
Yes.
like earth-tone cardigan.
He completely puts on the part.
Yeah. Andrew
when
Scott,
he needs to.
like, literally, he feels like a different character.
Yeah.
So you start to be like, well, maybe he's a different person, like, what's going
I remember
on?
wondering that.
Yeah.
He's brilliant. And we talked in the Doctor Who episode last that he's rumored to be a possible candidate for the next Doctor. What? I would be so on board with that.
That might even make me watch Doctor Who.
Oh my gosh, and not Tom Baker Doctor?
Yeah.
Stop being
See, I was
a
wondering how this was going to segue into David Tennant fandom. I feel like it's headed there. It's headed there.
David Tennant, hearts.
But I will say,
Matt Smith too. Sorry.
the one thing I will say about Doctor Who in this one is because the writing on Sherlock is so incredibly good, I can almost forgive Stephen Moffat for not putting the same type of effort into Doctor Who.
At times. Not always, but at times.
Because you're watching the 11th Doctor.
Well, the funny thing too is, Sherlock
No!
is his
Not
side.
the 11th Doctor, Kristen. We will not be friends.
The funny thing is, for Stephen Moffat, Doctor Who was his main job, and Sherlock was his side
Side
little
job.
side
It was.
project, and it's so much better than anything he did on Doctor Who.
You know what? I think a lot of it comes from Mark Gatiss, who is clearly a Sherlock Holmes
I
fanboy.
think so,
Yes.
too.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
But it also comes from the base material that was there.
True.
Yeah.
Very
But
well.
you can tell he's a fanboy. Like, you can tell he's grown up on it. I mean, he is British. I mean, you can tell he's grown up on it.
Mark
What?
Gatiss.
British?
No, but Mark Gatiss is all of his writing is good. Even his
Yes.
Doctor Who episodes are wonderful.
Yes.
His stuff on Game of Thrones
Good
is great.
point.
Everything that he touches is wonderful.
Well, I mean,
So
and
it's
he
good.
is. He is
Yeah, it
considered
does.
one of the foremost experts on Sherlock Holmes. Like, he is a Baker Street irregular. He knows the material back and forth, like, in his head, memorized.
Yeah, he's a Sherlockian.
And that's
Yeah.
the right
Yeah.
kind of person to be writing the
Yes.
show.
Maybe he should write or run Doctor Who.
I think they already have someone for that.
They do.
They do.
They have Christian L. He's coming. Who created Broadchurch.
Thank God.
So let's talk about this.
a
Because
good show.
Sherlock was co-created by Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, it's their only collaboration in the writing creating department. And it's Mark Gaddis's first show creation. It's Stephen Moffat's second because he created the British TV comedy Coupling.
Very good show.
Very, very good show.
Funny.
That was my first British TV show I ever watched. Was Coupling.
What?
So you
Yeah.
have
It's
watched
raunchy, but
The
it's
whole
funny.
thing. Yeah, I watched the whole thing.
Interesting. Good to know. We'll write that down.
Insights
That's why they
again,
tried to
that's it.
remake it for America like
Oh,
three
yeah.
different
it's
times.
awful.
And it didn't go well.
Bombed.
Yeah.
Never, ever.
If they collaborated again, now there are obviously some Whovians in the room who've been watching, because Stephen Moffat's run Doctor Who under Doctors 11 and 12. If they collaborated to create again, would you watch it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially if it was Torchwood or something.
It depends on what the subject matter is.
That's true, depending on where the source material is.
And I want Mark Gatiss to appear in it as a character, because I feel like he's a great character actor on top of his creativity.
Absolutely.
He surprised me.
Very
When
much.
I heard that one of the writers was playing a key role, I was like,
Yeah, I was like,
that doesn't
okay.
usually work.
Yeah.
No, it works.
It works.
It works.
And he did emphasize it more than it needed to be.
No.
Yeah.
He
No.
didn't make himself...
He didn't
Sometimes
make
I
himself
could-
a bigger character.
Would want more of him, but there's a lot of characters I would want more
Yeah.
of in
Yeah.
Sherlock.
No, I like the amount that Mycroft is in the show. It's
too.
just the right amount.
I love I didn't say it before, but I love the
I
Mycroft character.
love
Oh,
him
yeah.
in that show.
And he gets a great episode in season 4.
oh my gosh.
She's shy.
It's just teasers. It's okay.
No, it's fine.
Also,
I actually
TV.
really love him in the Christmas episode, which we'll
Yes.
discuss.
Yes.
I can't
I can't
wait.
wait.
I can't wait to discuss that.
That means I get to watch it again.
Yes.
Dude,
She's
I'm going
such
to
a
watch
good
it.
show.
later.
Is anyone
I'm
who
so
hasn't
excited.
watched Coupling going to watch Coupling because of this or anything that Moffat has touched?
I mean, maybe eventually, but
And you're not excited, Nick? Okay.
he goes,
Well, it's cute because it's based on his relationship with his wife. It's like how they met-ish.
I'm watching Golden Girls right now, okay?
Okay,
I gotta
fine.
focus.
Hashtag priorities.
Hashtag whoa. So we started to bridge this a little bit earlier, comparing Elementary to Sherlock as the two modern examples. But how does Sherlock compare to other Sherlock adaptations, most famously
Jeremy
Basil
Brett is
Rathbone
close
or Jeremy
second.
Brett?
I mean, I would almost give Jeremy Brett first just because he covered the entire canon except for like 2 because he
and
had
he's
health
from the
issues.
Victorian
And
time.
it's so much more accurate, but I mean, the stuff that they change, like we said,
They
a lot of
have
it
to
is
for
brilliant
modern
and it
times.
works.
When the Jeremy Brett stuff came out, it was brilliant.
Yes.
When the Benedict Cumberbatch stuff came out, it's brilliant. But I have trouble comparing the two.
Yeah,
because they
they're
are.
like
I
separate,
love both
they're
of them. I mean, they're both on
different
pedestals for me. I mean, I grew up with Jeremy Brett. I would watch that on PBS. I own every episode.
You're welcome, Christmas.
I thought his name was Kyle.
That's my sexy nickname.
too many weird insights.
And
Too many
we're
couples.
catching Luke Cage. Sweet
I
Christmas.
feel like he doesn't know what I think is sexy.
Okay, I was going to follow that up.
Anyways, but yes, Jeremy Brett's. I mean, I don't think they're comparable, but not comparable.
See, I enjoyed the Basil Rathbone stuff because that was my first introduction when I was growing up. That's what I saw.
I think it's
on
like
TV.
Doctor Who, like your first
It's
Doctor
your
has a special
first
place.
version.
Like,
But this blows them all out of the water.
Yeah.
There's not another incarnation of Sherlock Holmes to me that comes close. While I enjoyed the Robert Downey Jr. movies, those were more
They're just-
fluff.
yeah.
I really
Those
like
are like
those
a pulp
movies.
interpretation of
Yeah.
Sherlock.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
I like those movies, and now they seem like cartoons.
Yeah, I was going to say, when it came out, it was
Yes.
good.
The one
Seems
thing I
like
enjoy
the
is
action
the...
adventure version of
Yeah.
Sherlock.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
I like the Guy Ritchie stylistic take, especially the fight scenes where it kind of pauses and you see his thought processes. And there was in the episode with Irene where we were watching it last
Yeah, they
night,
did that a couple
when
times.
he looks at Mrs. Hudson and she's all bloodied, and then he sees the guy's ring has blood on it. He's worked
And
out
he's
how
like-
it's all happened.
he's
and when he's
going
looking
into
at
battle
her,
mode a little
yeah,
bit.
but when he's
Yeah.
looking at her, it's like, oh, she's
She's
injured
hurt
here.
here,
She's
yeah.
hurt there. When he
Yeah.
looks at him, it's all about this is where I can hurt him this way. This is where I can hurt him
This
that
way,
way and that
yeah.
way.
Similar feelings, definitely.
I do like the Irene Adler in that one. Rachel
I
McAdams.
like
too.
Rachel McAdams.
I love
She's
her.
very good.
The only thing I didn't like is she was too easily the damsel in distress.
Yeah, she wasn't
Yes.
quite the brilliant.
She wasn't nearly as clever.
And that's a
as
fault of the
Irene.
writing, not of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I agree with that too.
Her performance
But her
was...
performance,
Yeah,
Good
she
for
did
what she
very
got.
well
Yeah.
with what the material she was given.
the manner
And-
that she portrayed Irene is exactly what I picture when I read the
I
story.
agree.
I agree.
Exactly.
But she was working for Moriarty, whereas in this incarnation, Moriarty had been employed by Irene to
Right.
work
Then-
out how to get
Have you
around
seen that
things.
relationship on Elementary?
No.
Oh, I
Well,
don't.
Moriarty's a woman in
Irene
don't-
is Moriarty.
Irene
Yeah.
is Moriarty, yes.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
Natalie Dormer.
Yeah.
Spoiler for those of you who like to watch Elementary.
That was
We've
one
seen
change I
here,
didn't.
it's not.
See, I liked it. I thought
So-
it worked because
It was
it's
clever.
completely different than everything we've seen before, and especially when you're trying to distance yourself from something as great as Sherlock, I thought it worked in its favor. And I think Johnny Lee Miller's, since we're talking about the different Sherlocks, I think he's an amazing Sherlock Holmes. He's just overshadowed because Benedict
Yeah, it was
Cumberbatch has set the bar
so
so
good.
high.
Because he's amazing times infinity.
Did we
Well,
not even put
yeah.
House on this list?
House.
I don't include him.
The medical
I mean, that whole
House is based on Sherlock Holmes.
like completely.
Yeah.
Wilson
Yeah.
Mrs. Watson, and the way he's
They did it that way because they said
I've never
no one
watched
would accept a
House.
modern Sherlock Holmes.
Oh,
That's literally what the
really?
creators of that show said.
Oh, really?
And then,
Wow.
and then Sherlock comes along, so many years later, and it's like, yeah, you can.
they do
Yeah.
a good job with it though.
I had no
and
idea
that
that House
relation.
was based on Sherlock
Oh,
Holmes.
didn't
very
know
much
that
so.
either.
Hugh
And once
Laurie.
you know, it's very obvious. They mention Irene
Yes.
Adler. You don't
I
actually
love
get
Hugh
her.
Laurie.
If that's the case, then why the hell did they cast an English actor and make him do an American accent?
I don't know, but he does a great job.
They're-
There's a British
lot of people
cameraman
did
on that
not
show
know-
that wasn't allowed to speak because it would distract Hugh Laurie into breaking character.
I mean, a lot of people
Wow.
really had no idea that he. I mean, because he was less. Yeah, I'd say he was less familiar before that, and there was lots of people who had no idea that he was not American.
There's plenty
Yeah.
of Americans.
I actually
who
saw
know.
a
Yeah.
movie before with him in it. It was English.
He's in an episode of Friends.
See, and I'd
Is
actually...
he in an episode?
He's
of
in
Friends?
every episode
Yeah.
of Blackadder after season 1.
And I didn't like House because I read that it was their interpretation of Sherlock Holmes, and I felt like it was somebody who takes the arrogant side of Sherlock Holmes and completely misses the undertones of how he cares about people. Because House is too much of that,
He's too much of a.
too much of a jerk side of Sherlock Holmes. I feel like they
see that.
missed.
They kind of took the character, but there's nothing beyond that. There's nothing.
Yeah,
It's
it's hollow. It's like
House
somebody
was
it's
okay,
superficial.
but it actually has spoiled House for me, knowing that it's supposed to be based on the
Yeah.
whole Sherlock thing.
And that's I went into it watching it
I'm
knowing
kind
that it
of
was supposed to be
intrigued a
Sherlock
little more
Holmes.
because I wasn't very interested.
Well,
in
once you
them.
know some of the things are really like Holmes,
Super
House,
obvious.
they sound like the
Watts,
same type of
Wilson,
word.
he
Yes.
still lives at 221B, but it's in a, his apartment.
Yeah, it's an apartment,
Yeah, but he does.
and
Not
he's
a
got
flat.
addictions and like things.
And his Holmes moments are diagnosing super rare diseases that people
yeah,
can't.
like
it's-
he just knows. Like
No, that's
he
just
can
ruined House.
Yeah.
That's all destroyed House for me.
Spencer's being petulant now.
Oh, I'm mad.
He's mad. He's literally looking down at the floor.
No, it does. It went on a little too long because it has a structure.
So how does Sherlock compare to other genre shows, which would be mystery shows? Or where
way
does it
better.
rank in your pantheon of British TV that's gained an American or international following? And I say or just because.
See, I mean, mysteries, it's easily the top, because so many
Yeah.
others are just so procedural
They're
now.
They're
so
so
generic.
generic.
And they don't have the
Yeah, it's cut and paste the
rewatchability.
same
And
plot.
I
you don't
agree.
always know, even though you know the series. It keeps Sherlock keeps you
It keeps
Guessing.
you guessing
Yeah.
a little bit.
How
It's not predictable.
That's one of my things about procedurals is that they're too neat and they're predictable.
Well,
They're
so I don't
with,
watch
with
them.
procedurals as well, because it's an hour-long story, I always found myself getting to the point of, if they show you somebody in the first 10 minutes, okay, it's not going to be that person. I waited until about 40 minutes, and then
And
when they
that
accuse someone, I'm like,
person-
oh, well, that's it, because they've got to wrap it up now.
Yeah.
It's
Or,
became so
or if it's
annoying.
an obvious a special guest actor that you've seen in
Oh,
other
yeah,
things.
a good
you're like,
actor
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah.
You're like,
Oh,
oh, great,
okay.
he's
oh,
going
that
to be the
guy
bad
they
guy
took
at
in
the
second,
end.
that's a well-known actor.
My wife was watching Bones, and she said usually the more famous person is the red herring almost every single time.
Yeah.
Like that's how they try to
She's
twist it, but
right.
then it's not a twist because there's 10 seasons of it, and everyone knows that.
Yep.
I do like
watch it.
Bones though, but that has different things going on for it.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I actually usually don't get into crime dramas or mysteries in that kind of, direction. I get bored with them very easily.
Me too.
And also, when I'm watching TV, it's getting to the point because I'm just, I get tired after work and stuff. If things can just keep me awake at night, that says something by itself. So it's just kind of one of those things for me. And Sherlock has, even in rewatching it the many times that I have, I'm still as equally entertained as I was when I first watched it. Other shows I can take it or leave it.
I very rarely watch a TV show more than once. This one I can watch multiple
Yep.
times and still enjoy it and catch new things in it.
I mean, this is literally one of my favorite shows.
Yeah,
right
she
now.
one of the best shows.
rewatches it every month.
Yeah.
Ranking it amongst other British shows doesn't even matter because it's above. If you
It
throw all
is.
the other shows, that doesn't affect my ranking. It is so high up there.
I'm trying to
With
think of all the
Broadchurch,
British
though,
shows.
Broadchurch is really well done in my opinion as well.
Then we segue back into David Tennant.
You did
Hearts,
it.
hearts, 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 hearts.
Yeah.
I love Doctor
That's
Who,
hard
but
to
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Doctor Who, because it has more episodes, they're not all Like,
Yeah.
all of these episodes are damn near perfect.
Sherlock is consistent quality
Yes.
compared to Downton Abbey.
Yes.
Well, Kristen said in the beginning, quality versus quantity.
Yeah.
Sometimes that makes all the difference in the world. Yes, sometimes we have to painfully wait for them, but you just get way more payoff from it.
you know it's going to be done well when it does
Yes.
come out.
Yeah.
Do you, when you know it's going to premiere the next series, do you have trouble sleeping the night before?
Yes.
I haven't
I put
really...
it on our calendar.
I was say she'll get excited about it months in advance and count down.
The nice thing about the last season is they actually played it the same nights as they did in England.
Yeah.
The previous seasons they didn't, and I was finding it so that we could watch it the next day.
Yeah, that's
after
what we
it
were doing.
Yeah.
happened in England because I didn't want to wait 6 months.
Yeah.
See, I would wait on some websites and okay, check every minute. Is it posted yet? Is it posted yet?
Yep.
Is it posted
Yeah.
yet?
Okay.
Dedication, y'all.
So here's the funny next question. Would you recommend this show to others?
No.
Clearly not.
No, because I want to keep it all for myself.
We're selfish here at CPU. We don't
No, we're
share
not.
TV.
I am nervous about trying to recommend my wife, Sarah, who's a frequent panelist, to watch this show because I'm nervous that she'll, hate it.
Like,
Then
you
you
don't
have to
want her
get
to
it
show
more.
her
Yeah.
stuff.
Her to hate it.
Don't overhype it. That's what
Yeah,
you do
that's
sometimes.
You're wrong.
Well, sometimes that's true, though, because, Sarah gets, the expectations.
You
Yeah.
make her, you elevate her expectations.
And, she
gets
literally
drawn into
was
your
just-
passion.
Hey, I got her to like Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
Boo!
And a part of that is Scott Bakula. Come on.
Quantum Leap.
Kyle loves
Yes, we
Scott
do love
Bakula.
That's why.
Panel.
He's
Add
quantum
another
leap.
star to your list.
Kyle is in love. He
Oh my
carries it
gosh.
with him in the house.
Sarah and I started dating in January, and we were both like, we just got season 4 of Quantum Leap on DVD. And we both got it.
And you knew you were meant to be. Oh,
Yeah.
it's a love story.
So
There's
cute.
so
Then she
many
made me
happy
watch
stories.
Roswell.
We covered that on the X-Files series.
So let's
Go
get
back and
to
watch it.
Sherlock.
Oh, yeah.
So you
Yes,
would you
Yes.
recommend this
you
highly.
Yes, we would
Yes,
very
absolutely.
highly
It's
recommend.
amazing.
I-
Watch
yeah.
Of
It
all
can't
of
be
the
overhyped.
podcasts-
I can't.
Of all
You
of the
really-
podcasts I've been involved with, this is the show I would recommend most to
Agreed.
anybody that's heard the voice.
Completely agree.
And
I
I don't
would.
think I've talked to anybody who's watched it and not been.
I do have a
not
question,
liked
though.
it.
Yeah.
I think it sounded like everyone's kind of read the stories or watched. So we have
At least
okay.
have a familiarity
Yeah.
with the character.
Do you think somebody who... Oh, I've heard of Sherlock Holmes, but never really read or watched anything with
With
him
this
before.
show,
Would
I
they
don't
care?
think it matters.
I don't think it
No, I
matters
don't
either.
think-
I
I think it
honestly
is done
think
that
that
well.
might be.
Uh,
It could be a good thing.
I think this
Yeah.
would people that I know so many people that don't read
Yeah.
that started picking up the short stories and then eventually the longer ones just because they loved it so much and they're like, I know who Sherlock Holmes is, but I never really realized that this is who he is, and it brought a whole new interest into it.
Yeah.
And it's got such a pace. I mean, there's a lot of ADD-ness about the world right now, but this completely feeds into that pace.
Yeah.
Well, holy crap. If writing back when these were written, the whole, oh, you see but don't observe thing, we as a society are not observing anything.
I was talking
right
about.
now.
Yeah.
Far worse now than it was
Time.
then.
Yeah.
If they didn't do the little floaty words, I'd be lost. So I'd be like, what? Are you... Oh.
Nope.
No, we're not going to keep watching, Kylie.
Not? Will you just stop lying to the listener, please? You're all going to keep watching.
If
Yeah.
it comes back.
If season
it
5
comes back.
happens, I will
Yes.
be watching it the moment it's
It will be on the
Yeah,
calendar.
as long as they keep making it, I will keep watching.
I think that's a unanimous
Yeah,
vote.
they've done nothing to deter.
I. Did you say I like your husband? Oh my.
I mean, I'm trying not to be overly girly like I was in the Flash podcast. But
You're
like,
doing fine. Because you were really girly in the Flash.
I know, but yes, I'm so excited for any possibility of more. I really hope they have time. I really do. They're so popular now.
They are. They get jobs all the time. All the time.
Marvel
They're in-
owns both of them now, so
I know.
Marvel and Disney, you must share.
Share
Yeah.
with the
Because,
BBC.
he may not have been able to be Doctor Strange if it wasn't for those other things.
That's true. Yeah.
Actually, it's Doctor. He sounds
Mr.
very
Doctor.
strange with an American
Oh, yeah.
accent.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And it's like I was fine with it the first time I watched it, and then the second time I watched it just
It's more
after rewatching
noticeable.
Sherlock, and then it's like, yeah,
Weird.
not the best.
That happens sometimes.
It didn't need him to have an American accent.
Let's talk about Arthur Darvill. Okay, never mind. Is there anything else in enthusiastic panel.
I do want to. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, Nick.
I started by saying how they're each their own little movie, but then not only is each series a whole connected story, the whole 4 series is also part of a bigger picture.
It's
and
story
amazing.
inception.
Sure.
Sure.
Sureception.
No, just stop there. Too far.
Hashtag
And-
shush.
Aw.
You got shut down.
Ironic hashtags are fun.
Brother high fives now.
Oh my gosh, can you be around more?
See, that's what I'm saying.
Please.
You don't even have to watch the show.
Well, to lock her in a closet again when we are.
Well, we can't end it on that.
Again, weird insight. Weird insight.
There's a curtain on it. It doesn't have a lock.
Could you just fade
She
the
just can't work
podcast?
out how to get past the curtain.
Is there anything else, Nicholas, that you want to say about Series 1 and Series 2 of Sherlock?
I'm disappointed there was no bees.
Bees.
What are you talking
Yes, Sherlock Holmes is a avid.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's a beekeeper.
That's right.
It's a big part of his
Mr.
life.
Holmes does that
Sorry,
very well.
that
in
just
the
it
movie.
was. It,
It
just
is
took
one
me
of the
some-
only things in elementary they make up they work that in really good.
There's a lot fewer bees in the world, though.
They do work in
Well,
the
they actually play that into
tobacco.
elementary and
Too
why he's
soon,
such a
yeah.
beekeeper.
They do work in the tobacco ash obsession.
Yes,
Sherlock.
that was
That's
very
that.
nice when Watson commented
Oh,
about.
yeah, his
Well, they
paper.
want to read my blog. They don't give a damn about your
I have a blog.
tobacco website.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about Series 1 or Series 2?
You should just really watch it. We already said it, but just
Yeah.
watch it.
I mean,
Everything else I have to say cannot be
Not
said
me.
on this podcast.
costuming
Wait for the
was
next one.
great. Cinematography was
Yeah,
really
everything
good.
was on point.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even say that. When he flips up his coat collar or lapel or whatever, it's like his signature thing for his modern. And I just like that. It's so simple. It's such a simple thing, but it just adds to his character
It's the
so
attention
much.
to
It
detail.
does.
Yeah.
Yes.
The attention to detail, and that goes back to what Kyle was saying about Mark Gatiss being a true fan and knowing Sherlock inside and out. You can see those small details all the way through this.
Oh yeah, I mean, like when he first does that in season 2, when he flips it up with the deer stalker. I mean, it stops on a photographer taking a picture, but it looks exactly like one of Sidney Paget's original drawings of Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
It is
Very-
seriously-
It's
it's
a
like-
very pointed moment.
Yes, and like as a Sherlock Holmes fan, I mean, for all it's a funny little moment, but as a Sherlock Holmes fan, it's just amazing that they worked that in.
Yeah, Kyle gets giddy.
What?
I'm just saying.
Passionate and giddy.
Insight.
So are you about Beverly Crusher, okay? So
So many insights.
She's just a good doctor.
This is a very personal podcast.
have you
I'm
met
feeling a
her
little
recently?
uncomfortable right now.
You do?
No.
Well, with that said, at this time I'd like to thank Nick, Hilary, Kyle, Kristen L, Kristin T, and Spencer.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
For joining me to talk about Sherlock Series 1 and 2. Now, as I indicated to you at the beginning, this is the first of a 2-part series. This panel will return to talk about Series 3 and 4 and the intervening Christmas special very, very soon. But until that time, what I'm going to do now is tell you that CPU is produced by Backpocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, and hails from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play. What that means is give us some stars, maybe give us a little review, let the peoples know how we're doing, let us know how we're doing, or comment on YouTube, because we have something there too. We can spread the word more effectively if you do. If you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, via email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via Facebook and Twitter. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. As always, we have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Make sure you subscribe to the blog, our channels, our social media accounts, or any of those things to stay up on new events and episodes. You can find old CPU episodes by searching for us via the web, or directly on our website, or on your convenient podcast feeds. Sherlock is currently available through the 2015 Christmas special on You Better Pay Me, Netflix. Series 4 will no doubt be made available later this year, so if you want to revisit, find yourself the little red icon and tell them to give me a free subscription. Until next time, keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned.